Chapter 3500. Commander-in-Chief Xia suddenly stood up and said, "Min Kong? Okay, I'll have her comrades arrive immediately. Please give Yi Qian my order, and tell her to do everything she can to sneak onto the cargo ship." Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the time and quickly called Major General Yang on another landline. "Major General Yang, immediately send your troops to Jinsher Minkong. Yi Qian accidentally found someone with guns on a ship at Minkong." "Yes, sir." Major General Yang, who was also in the military, responded sternly and quickly contacted Pigeon, White Crane, and 6 other Special Forces members of the Snowfield Brigade who were supporting the encirclement operation. At the same time, Father Fu heard Commander-in-Chief Xia urgently contacting 3 parties, first Major General Yang, then the National Defense Committee, and the Military Commission for Discipline Inspection. After the 3 parties finished contacting each other, he spoke to Father Fu again. "Major General Fu, our Special Forces will immediately head to Jinsher Minkong and seal off the coastline. Please pass on my order to Yi Qian immediately. The news is only half reliable. Old Man Li used his connections to make Li Chuhai escape. It is indeed easier to escape from Jinsher Minkong, especially in international waters. The chance of escape is more than 70%. Father Fu himself felt that Li Chuhai would most likely choose Minkong to escape, and the ship that Yi Qian found the problem was most likely the ship that he escaped from. Otherwise, why would there be armed personnel guarding the ship? The ship leaves at 2 a.m., and it is 10 p.m. now. There are still 4 hours before the ship departs, but there is a possibility that it will leave earlier. So, please come to Minkong as soon as possible." Father Fu's back was almost straight. Although there was no change in his expression, it was obvious that Father Fu was not as calm as he appeared to be on the surface. Father Fu was left-handed, but he could also use his right hand flexibly. Yi Qian was similar to Father Fu in this aspect. Only in an emergency could it be seen that both father and daughter were left-handed. The entire call lasted less than 3 minutes. When Father Fu and Commander-in-Chief Xia ended the call, Yi Qian had also sent out a text message asking him to do everything he could to get on the ship. The faces of the leaders of the 3 academies were as solemn as dark clouds. Although they didn't know which military leader Major General Fu was talking to on the other end of the phone, it didn't stop them from getting some clues from the short 3-minute conversation. "The military is pursuing an important fugitive. Our initial judgment is that this person will escape from our country through Jin City's private port. I suspect that the armed staff that the 4 students encountered is very likely to be the personnel who will receive this important fugitive. The military has already sent reinforcements. The police shouldn't be alarmed to avoid alerting the enemy and causing the important fugitives to change their route. Now Yi Qian needs to cooperate with the military. The other 3 students will return to the reception center for foreign guests." The leaders of the Naval Command Academy and the Air Force Academy let out a long sigh of relief. But before they could completely relax, their faces became serious again. How could Yi Qian, a student from the National University of Science and Technology, cooperate with the military? How could this be arranged? The other party had a gun, but she didn't have any weapon to defend herself. Moreover, she was only a second-year student. She only had experience in drills with other students. She didn't have any actual combat experience. How could the higher-ups ask her to cooperate? This was illogical. The leaders of the National University of Science and Technology gritted their teeth. The third-year student was outstanding, but the second-year student Yi Qian was equally outstanding. How could there be such an illogical arrangement for Yi Qian to stay behind and face danger alone and wait for reinforcements? Chapter 3501. The leader of the National University of Science and Technology, who was worried about the safety of his students, raised his doubts with a dark expression. The other party has a gun, but Yi Qian doesn't. How can she cooperate? The leader of the National University of Science and Technology's voice was as cold as ice. He just wanted all of his students to come back and not leave a single one behind. Father Fu could hear the leader of the National University of Science and Technology's worry about his daughter, Yi Qian. As a father, he was worried about his daughter as well, but since Commander-in-Chief Xia gave the order, as a father, he had no right to interfere. His daughter was a soldier. If he stopped her from following orders because he was worried about her safety, then he didn't deserve to wear the green military uniform that protected the country's peace and stability. Green represented hope and new life. The meaning of the military uniform was to protect the country. As a soldier, chasing down criminals that threatened the country was an unshirkable responsibility. His daughter had to shoulder this responsibility. Yi Qian's professional ability is very strong. The higher-ups believe that she can complete the mission successfully. Moreover, we don't want her to directly negotiate with the dangerous people with guns. We want her to sneak onto the ship first. With Yi Qian's ability, she can definitely do it. Father Fu comforted the leader of the National University of Science and Technology. When Yi Qian received the message, she and the 3 students were hiding behind a tall container. They heard the sound of footsteps walking past them. "I don't see anyone. Inform the front to block the passage. You two go this way. We'll search this way." "Okay. They can't have gone far. They must be nearby. Search this way." The 4 people in charge of the search stood behind the container and whispered to each other. They immediately split up and searched left and right carefully. They had to find the 4 young people. Otherwise, they would be in trouble. The voice of the guard in front came from the walkie-talkie they carried with them. F***CK, have you found them? If you haven't, send more people to search together. I don't believe that the 4 of them disappeared into thin air. They must still be inside. If we can't find them, we'll all be in trouble. The voice was very close, as if it was right next to their ears. Yi Qian made a hand gesture. The few of them leaned against the cold container and slowly circled around the 2 people who were searching for them. Other than Yi Qian, the other 3 students were a little nervous. This was their first time confronting dangerous people with guns. No matter how strong they were still a little nervous. After all, the other party had guns. Yi Jian, on the other hand, was not nervous at all. She was calm and composed. Therefore, she took the lead and led the third-year students to play hide-and-seek with the people who were searching for them. The 3 male students were stunned. If they had to stay on the ship, it should be the 3 of them. How could they let the female students stay? Yi Qian did not have time to explain. She whispered and led the 3 students in the direction of the port. Only then did they realize that they had mistakenly entered the cargo ship. They should have gone left when they reached the port, but they had chosen to go straight in the middle. Fortunately, they had gone the wrong way. Otherwise, they would not have known that there was something wrong with the cargo ship. Chapter 3502. The 3 students were very good at dealing with emergencies. When Yi Qian asked them to stay, they didn't say anything immediately. Instead, they retreated to the dock together. They had to leave this place first. This was not the time to talk about other things. Staying here for 1 more minute meant more danger. It wasn't too late to leave first. The 4 of them cooperated very well. Plus, the containers were tall and big. There were a few times when they heard footsteps coming, but the 4 of them were able to avoid them. It took them less than 15 minutes to walk from the dock to the cargo ship. It took them half the time to return to the dock from the cargo ship. They were able to dodge successfully. Otherwise, they would have wasted more time. The 4 of them, who were almost out of the container, hid under another container. The exit was right in front of them. From where they were, they could see that there were at least 4 people guarding the exit. How were they going to get out? The senior from the National Science University, Zhang Minghong, looked outside and then retreated. He whispered to Yi Qian, "If we leave, what will happen to you? We've confirmed that there's something wrong with the cargo ship. But once you're exposed, the military uniform you're wearing will put you in danger. You don't have any self-defense weapons, but they have guns. Zhang Minghong wanted to stay with them. His voice became darker. I'll stay. You send Jiang Yang and Li Xiang away. Jiang Yang and Li Xiang heard him. How could they let the students from the National Science University stay? The two of them shook their heads and said in unison, No, we have to stay. We have to stay together. Before they could finish, they saw Yi Qian, who was standing at the outermost area, suddenly move. The three of them looked up in shock. They saw Yi Qian rush out like a cheetah in the dark. When he came back, he was dragging a man who was struggling with his throat. Before they could react, Yi Qian pressed the man to the ground. You guys stay on guard, Eldest senior brother Guo Ku hadn't even finished his sentence of, I'm going to help, when they heard the sound of a bone breaking. The senior from the National Science University, Zhang Minghong, who had taken half a step forward, suddenly froze. His eyes widened as he stared blankly. The man who had been trying to kick the container to attract the attention of his accomplices was now motionless. He had been able to move a second ago, but now, he was completely motionless. The three of them widened their eyes in shock. Damn! F***ck. Damn. This. Did he break his neck? The female student, Yi Qian, directly twisted the neck of the guy who got close to them, and broke it. F***ck. His first move was a sure kill move, and his movements were so familiar that it was as if he had done this kind of thing often. F***ck. He had directly killed someone. After quickly eliminating a target, Yi Qian picked up the pistol that had fallen to the ground. He said to the three male students who were frozen in shock, Now you have a self-defense weapon. It's a Walter P99A3 double-action basic automatic pistol. No wonder you didn't fire easily. It's because this gun can't be fitted with a silencer. Not bad, it's a new handgun that came out in 1997. As she spoke, she took out the magazine to check its capacity. She even took out a bullet and observed it. 10 live bullets. That's enough. 1 shot, 1 target. 10 bullets, 10 targets. That's definitely enough. She just had to be a little frugal and shoot accurately. She couldn't shoot blindly. She had even finished checking the handgun. The three male students who had been stunned by her move were still in shock. Chapter 3503. I'll change into the uniform for you guys. Help me bring it out. I'll wear this guy's clothes and sneak onto the ship. Yi Qian didn't know that her actions had stunned the three male students. As she spoke, she began to strip off the clothes of the guy she had already taken care of. The third-year senior had reminded her that it was indeed inappropriate to sneak onto the ship while wearing a student uniform and a military coat. If she was exposed, she would be exposed. She was afraid of alerting the enemy. It would be more convenient to change clothes. The three male students' necks were so stiff that they could make a rusty, squeaking sound. This guy. He was dead. Yi Qian had twisted his neck and killed him. Seeing Yi Qian move, the three of them came back to their senses. They couldn't help but gulp. This was really a little scary. This was their first time seeing a person's life end just like that. It was also their first time seeing a fellow military academy student kill someone so cleanly. No, it shouldn't be called killing someone. It should be called clearing an obstacle. Is he dead? The third-year senior, Zhang Minghong, who had been gulping repeatedly, approached slowly and then slowly squatted down. He was probably still a little worried, so he reached his hand under the nostrils where the obstacle had been cleared. Yes, he's not breathing anymore. Yi Qian was just about to pull off the person's sleeve when she used a bit of force. The already dead target's arm suddenly jerked up. The third-year senior, who had reached his hand out, was so frightened that he retracted his hand. His face paled. Seeing this, Yi Qian finally realized what the consequences of her actions were. She quickly looked up at the other two students. Although she couldn't see their expressions, she could still feel that something was off. She then looked up at the third-year senior who was accompanying her. Yi Qian said softly, "Sorry, I must have scared you guys just now. The situation was urgent. If we didn't take care of him immediately, the four of us would definitely be exposed. Look, we're only 10 meters away from the exit. If he shouted or kicked the container, the people guarding the exit would arrive immediately. I had to make the right choice immediately." After being with her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade for so long, their habitual actions were the same. They would do everything possible to break the target's neck. She had forgotten that the 3 male students with her were different from her. From their reactions, it was obvious that they had never seen a student kill someone. She had set a precedent for them, so they must have been scared. Zhang Minghong shook his head at first, but then he felt that since Yi Jian apologized to them, she must have seen that they were really frightened. He nodded and whispered, "Well, they were really frightened. They are so skilled that they seem to do it often. Even our school's physical training doesn't have such training. How could they train like that?" Yi Qian didn't want to lie, so she just smiled and didn't explain. Zhang Minghong felt that he might know a little why his junior, Yi Qian, could shine in her freshman year and let many students know about her. Just based on her calmness and reaction just now, it was enough to convince countless students. Although they were excellent in all aspects, they had never been on a real battlefield. They had never seen a life disappear right under their noses. Chapter 3504. The visual sense was too strong and they were caught off guard. Their hearts were still beating erratically, sometimes fast and sometimes slow. They had yet to recover from the shock. Jiang Yang from the Air Force Academy secretly raised his hand to wipe the sweat off his forehead. He was really sweating. This was the first time he had seen a fellow student so skillfully remove obstacles. That movement was even more ruthless, fast, and accurate than the Cheetah Special Forces soldiers who came to teach at the academy last year. Those who didn't know better would have thought that Yi Qian was a Special Forces soldier. He was vigilant of his surroundings while carefully observing the area in front of him, in case someone else silently approached. Li Xiang from the Navy Command Academy continuously adjusted his breathing so that he could quickly recover from the shock. This was not the time for them to be shocked. Yi Qian had chosen the most effective and beneficial method for them. They shouldn't be dragging her down. Although they did indeed give him a fright, this was the best solution. If Yi Qian hadn't noticed someone approaching in time, they would have most likely been taken care of. After adjusting his breathing, Li Xiang was responsible for the southeast area. Yi Jian had already taken off the man's coat and the security uniform he was wearing underneath. Zhang Minghong, the third-year senior whose face was a little pale, was preparing to unbuckle the belt on the man's pants that was gradually turning cold. Just as Yi Qian was about to change his clothes, a voice suddenly came from underground. The 3 male students in charge of guarding the area were so shocked that their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. The other party's gloomy voice came from the walkie-talkie on the ground, asking about the situation here. How should they answer? If they didn't answer, it would alert the other party. If they answered, as long as they heard something wrong, they would immediately know what happened. Yi Qian folded his coat and military uniform neatly and handed them to the third-year senior. Then, he calmly picked up the walkie-talkie on the ground, and a deep male voice came from his throat. Another wave of shock came, making the 3 male students' jaws drop. This works. He can even imitate voices. Student Yi Qian, did you learn ventriloquism? Nothing. Yi Jian only answered with 4 words. Her voice was muffled from her throat. It was very similar to the muffled sound that came from the throat of a defeated target when their mouth was covered. Coupled with the sea breeze, the sound was a little muffled, which made it even more similar. The other party didn't suspect anything and said coldly, Looks like these 4 bastards want to hide and seek with us. Then let them hide forever. Kill them when we find them. Yes. No nonsense, the simpler the better. Send a few security guards. A bunch of trash. How dare they let them in? Tell them to keep a close eye on them. Make them pay. To the other, to the guards, to the security guard, to the security guard, to the security guard. To the point, to the guard to make. The sound of static interference could be heard. After Yi Qian heard it, he silently turned off the walkie-talkie in her hand. His eyes narrowed slightly. He had a follow-up plan in his mind. Previously, he had thought that he couldn't directly charge in, but now it seemed that it was possible. Chapter 3505. From the conversation earlier, they could tell that the people guarding the exit were Real security guards. That was why the exit was so relaxed, allowing the 4 of them to enter so easily. No wonder when the 4 of them came in, other than the security guards who told them they could go in and watch, there was no one else at the entrance to the freighter. It turned out that they had all been lazy to drink. With a plan in mind, Yi Qian held her gun and carefully observed her surroundings. She whispered, "Later, I will continue to disguise myself and lure everyone to the center, including the people at the exit. As for you guys, once the people at the exit leave, don't look back. Keep running outside. Remember, you must not look back." Yi Qian did not give the 3 students a chance to refuse. She had the ability to protect herself and had a self-defense weapon, but the 3 of them did not. No matter what, she had to make them leave first and not stay behind. Senior Zhang Minghong still wanted to object, but Yi Qian said calmly, "I can kill people." "Senior, are you sure you can kill people in such a short time?" "No, you can kill people, but it will be difficult for you to make a decision based on your instincts. So, the 3 of you can't stay behind. If you leave, I only need to take care of myself. If you stay behind, I will need to be distracted. Listen to my orders, which are also the orders of the higher-up. I will cover for you to leave before you sneak into the freighter." The 3 male students had no way to refute her. They indeed could not kill a target with a single move like Yi Qian. "Do any of you have a cell phone? Give me one. My phone will run out of battery soon. I'm afraid I won't be able to send a message outside in time if anything happens. Also, take off your coats and military uniforms. They are heavy and will affect your running speed. Put them on when you reach the reception center for foreign guests. Don't let the front desk notice anything. After you go out, immediately report the situation inside to the higher-ups so that they can know more about the situation inside. They all have guns. The P99A3 I have is a basic model that was only released in 1997. Now that they all have guns, it shows that these people have connections with foreign countries. After you go out, you must report it clearly. Don't leave anything behind." Yi Qian would not let them stay behind. First, they would distract her, and second, they would make her feel restrained. After working with her comrades in the Snowfield Brigade for so long, she was not used to working with them in a combat situation like this. Since their standards were different, it was difficult for them to work together well. Unable to refute, the 3 of them nodded solemnly. Li Xiang said, "All right, we will leave first. You must take good care of yourself." He took out his phone from his pocket and said, "This is my phone. It's fully charged and has been switched to silent mode. If anything happens, you must report it to the outside." Yi Qian took the phone and nodded slightly. Jiang Yang pursed his lips and said, "Yi Qian, when you come back, I'll bring you to the Air Force Academy for a tour and show you the latest fighter jets. We'll wait outside for your safe return." During the exchange, Jiang Yang found out that Yi Qian wanted to see a fighter jet. As an outstanding student of the Air Force Academy, he often came into contact with fighter jet. He could help Yi Qian fulfill his wish. "All right, it's a deal." Yi Qian stretched out his hand and gestured for the 4 of them to put their hands on top of each other. Senior brother Zhang Minghong placed his hand on top of Yi Qian's. We'll be waiting for your safe return. I'll definitely be back. Don't worry. Yi Qian, whose hand was placed in the middle, promised them that she would definitely return safely. Her new life had just begun. She couldn't bear to leave everything behind. In the darkness, the four of them finally split up. Yi Qian snuck into the middle of the container while dragging the dead target. After about 3 minutes, someone suddenly shouted, "Here, they're here! Quick, quick!" Chapter 3506. Soon, the footsteps that were originally light suddenly became louder. Thump, thump, thump. They were all running towards one direction. Yi Jian shouted again, "They're running outside. Those guarding the exit, come and block them. Don't let them get out." The many containers in the harbor suddenly became lively. At least 8 people joined the blockade and moved to one side. The 3 male students who were lying on top of the container heard the footsteps running past their ears. Their faces were tense. It was Yi Jian who had attracted everyone's attention. She was the one who had used her own life to cover their retreat. Remember what Yi Qian said. Don't go back. Sprint 10 meters. Zhang Hongming clenched his fists and said in a low voice, "Don't let her worry about us." When the people guarding the exit heard that the people they wanted to catch were heading in the direction of the harbor, they really rushed in without leaving a single guard outside. These people were not armed personnel but real security guard. They only knew that 4 young people had sneaked in while they were drinking and warming themselves up. They even took the opportunity to steal something from the cargo ship. If the 4 of them did not catch the thieves tonight, not only would they lose their pay, they would also lose their jobs. Thinking that their jobs would be in danger, the 4 security guards rushed in from the direction of the exit. They ran quite fast and arrived in a short while. Yi Qian created a diversion from behind to buy time for the 3 male students to escape. When the 3 male students saw the 4 security guards running away, they knew that their chance to escape had come. "Run!" Zhang Minghong shouted in a low voice. The 3 of them jumped down from the container and flew towards the exit like lightning. Outstanding students did not just pass their specialized courses, their physical performance was also quite outstanding. For military academy students who had achieved all-round development, sprinting about 10 meters like this was not difficult for them. The 3 of them were so fast that they became afterimages in the darkness. Without giving the people inside a chance to react, they rushed to the entrance in a single breath. Yi Qian had been paying attention to the 3 of them while she was creating a diversion. When she saw the 3 of them rushing out, she immediately shouted, "They're running towards the exit. Motherf asterisk curs. A bunch of bastards. Looks like they're really F asterisk king used to stealing. Motherf asterisk cur, chase after them. Those bastards outside, guard this place well for me." The security guards who were scolded looked at each other. How were they going to guard the place? They all ran in. However, he didn't stay for too long and continued to chase in the direction of the exit. Just as everyone was rushing towards the exit, someone suddenly shouted in a low voice. Immediately after, there was the sound of someone falling into the water. Someone had fallen into the sea. "Bring me the rope, quick." The man who had been chasing after Yi Qian happened to see the figure falling into the sea. He thought that it was his partner and hurriedly shouted to look for the rope. Unexpectedly, the rope was not found and he was almost kicked into the sea. "Fish my ass. Climb up by yourself. Why aren't you fucking chasing after him? Now that you've lost something, none of you will have an easy time." This person was in charge of the safety of the entire dock. In the end, such a thing happened. Whenever he thought about how he was not strict enough and how someone had taken the opportunity to sneak in, he would be so angry that his liver would hurt. Yi Qian, who was hiding below, said in a muffled voice, "I'll come up by myself." One of the men looked down and said, "Come up quickly." He then chased after Yi Qian with the foreman. The group of people chased after Yi Qian, but there was no trace of him. Not even a shadow could be seen. Chapter 3507. The four security guards stood uneasily in front of the foreman. Their hearts were in a mess. It was their fault for being greedy. They wanted to taste the whiskey and find out what it tasted like. Thinking that no one would come to the port in the middle of the night, they secretly left for a while. In the end, they tasted it, but it didn't taste good at all. They might even lose their jobs. The foreman gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it! You can't even guard the door. Why did I ask you to come here? Did you see what the four thieves looked like?" The four security guards looked at each other. The uneasiness in their hearts grew. What did they look like? They didn't even see their shadows, let alone what they looked like. But now they could only be thieves. The bolder and younger security guard nodded. He swallowed his saliva and replied, "Those four thieves, we have seen them before. They are habitual thieves. They came here a few times before. Every time they are like demons. We can't catch them. They also stole 2 cargo ships in front of us. Later, they even called the police. Why don't we call the police and ask the police for help?" "Call the police? Call the police, my ass. Didn't they see that they were caught in the dark? If they could call the police, they would have caught all the thieves with great fanfare. Why would they need the police to come?" The foreman glared at the security guards who didn't know anything. He turned around and took out his walkie-talkie to contact the people on the ship. When he contacted the people on the boat, there was a 180-degree change in his tone. He told them about the situation on the boat and said that there were a few habitual thieves nearby. The police had tried to catch them twice but couldn't. He asked if they should continue to search outside. After a while, a cold voice came from the other side. The foreman patted his chest and guaranteed that they were really habitual thieves. He had seen them before. He even said that the next time he saw them, he would give them a good beating. The other side probably believed the foreman's words. They didn't ask any more questions and turned off the walkie-talkie. After the foreman ended the conversation with his employer, he said to his men, "You guys keep a close watch. Don't let anyone in before the ship leaves. If they dare to ruin my reputation and cause me to lose my job here, think about how much less money you will earn in a year." "We'll definitely guard it well. We'll definitely guard it well. There won't be any more problems. If there are any more problems, we'll just pack up and leave. There's no need for you to do anything." Yes. Don't worry, we'll definitely guard it well this time. Even a fly can't get past us." Those who wanted to make a lot of money patted their chests and promised. The 4 security guards outside didn't know anything. When they realized that they didn't lose their jobs, they were naturally happy to promise as well. The foreman was not at ease with the security guards outside. After waving his hand to let them go, he sternly ordered a few people around him to keep an eye on the entrance and exit before turning to board the ship. Yi Qian, who was hiding in the shadows, did not immediately sneak onto the ship. She had just taken care of one target, and now she needed to take care of another. This target could not be eliminated immediately, and had to be kept alive. If she took care of all of them, once the overseers realized that there were fewer people, they would definitely be alerted. With a plan in mind, Yi Qian lowered his gaze slightly, and a contemplative look appeared on his face. At first, she thought that her pursuers were all armed, but now it seemed like that wasn't the case. There were only 2 people armed with guns. She had already taken care of one of them, and the other was the one who pushed the target she had taken care of into the sea. That person whispered, "Hurry up," and chased after her. This person was partners with the man she had taken care of. Chapter 3508. This person had a gun on him and was in cahoots with the 2 armed guards who had stopped the 4 of them at the beginning. The foreman probably didn't know that 2 people had infiltrated his security team. Otherwise, he would have had a gun on him as well. As for why the foreman didn't listen to the security guards outside and chose to call the police, it could only mean one thing. He knew something was wrong with the ship. It could even be said that he was responsible for the security of the ship in order to make a high profit. This type of ship could be called a cargo ship. All the relevant procedures were legal, but behind the legal procedures there were people doing illegal things. The foreman's job was to provide security for these illegal activities. I know, everyone is well aware of it. Soon, the empty space in the middle of the container quieted down again. A man looked around and walked towards the spot where someone had fallen into the water. His accomplice didn't show up, so he was a little worried that he fell into the sea and didn't manage to climb ashore. Yi Jian, who gently jumped down from the container, shushed the man's back a few times. Without waiting for the man to come closer, she continued to imitate the voice of the man who was long gone. "I'll go over and take a look. You stay here and keep a close watch." When the man heard his companion's voice, he turned around and wanted to say a few more words. However, he only saw a black shadow sweep past before his eyes. Then, there was no other movement except for the sound of the waves. He couldn't help but frown, but he quickly relaxed his brows and contacted the people on the ship in a low voice. Yi Qian had already left. If she was still there, she would have definitely heard that this man wasn't speaking their language. Even his facial features were slightly different, but he was still Asian. When they were about to reach the cargo ship, Yi Qian received another text. This time, it was from Commander-in-Chief Xia. It said, "Li Chuhai has confirmed that he escaped from this ship. Please be careful." These few words made Yi Qian's eyes shine with the coldest and harshest light. It didn't disappear for a long time. Li Chuhai was the mastermind behind her mother's death. He was the one who had been in contact with Yi Zhifan for the past few years and told Yi Zhifan to take care of her. If Yi Zhifan's family was the cause of her tragedy in her past life, then Li Chuhai was the source of her tragedy in her past life. He killed her mother and caused her tragedy in her previous life. For herself and for her mother, as long as he boarded the ship, she had to catch him with her own hands. The cold light in his eyes gradually receded, turning into a black that was so thick that it could not be dissolved, as if it could devour everything. Father Fu once again received a call from Commander-in-Chief Xia. This time, he confirmed that Li Chuhai was indeed fleeing towards Jin City. In other words, there was a 90% chance that this cargo ship was Li Chuhai's means of transportation to leave China. His only option now was to use the sea. I told Yi Qian the news that Li Chuhai might have escaped onto the cargo ship. I wanted her to know what she was about to face so that she could be more alert and deal with any unexpected situations. Commander-in-Chief Xia said calmly over the phone. She wanted to join the encirclement operation before, and she finally got her wish tonight. I'm sure she's very happy right now. It's necessary to relax when you're nervous. Let her know that she's encircling Li Chuhai now. She'll take better care of herself and won't act rashly before she sees Li Chuhai. Father Fu thought about it but said, I didn't show her Li Chuhai's photo. She might not be able to recognize Li Chuhai even if she sees him. Chapter 3509. Yi Qian had never seen Li Chuhai's photo before, so he had no idea what he looked like. However, Commander-in-Chief Xia wasn't worried that Yi Qian wouldn't be able to recognize Li Chuhai. As a Special Forces soldier, Yi Qian had a very keen intuition for special people and things. Compared to Commander-in-Chief Xia, Father Fu didn't know much about Yi Qian's abilities. When he heard Commander-in-Chief Xia say that Yi Qian would be able to recognize Li Chuhai even if he hadn't seen him before, he believed him. Now, Father Fu and the others could only wait quietly for the 3 male students to arrive. Father Fu took into account that Old Man Li had a wide network of connections, so he didn't go downstairs to wait for the 3 male students to arrive. Instead, he waited at the same spot. Time ticked by. Seeing that no one had come back even when the clock pointed to 10:30, the leaders who were waiting for the students to come back had solemn expressions on their faces. They didn't even make eye contact as they anxiously waited for the outstanding students to come back. Around 10:40 a.m., the 3 students who had escaped finally rushed back. Seeing them push open the door and enter, the leaders who were sitting all stood up in an instant. Seeing that their students had returned safely, their eyes all lit up. When they saw that they were dressed neatly, the leaders heaved a sigh of relief. "Quick, come in quickly." Father Fu asked the three of them to come in quickly and close the door. Before he could sit down again, he was already asking them about the situation. Senior Zhang Minghong quickly reported the situation inside. He spoke very calmly, but he couldn't hide the anxiety in his eyes. He also reported Yi Qian's instructions to them without missing a single word. He emphasized how Yi Qian quickly eliminated a target. When the leaders heard this, they held their breaths for a moment. Break his neck? Directly? The leader of the Air Force Academy couldn't help but ask. Directly break his neck. The three of us didn't notice anyone approaching. Yi Qian was the first to react. He rushed out and covered the mouth of the person with a gun and dragged him over. The three of us wanted to help, but Yi Qian took care of him quickly. The whole process took less than 10 seconds. Taking care of a person in less than 10 seconds wasn't just good at fighting, it was also very good at taking care of the enemy in one move. To be able to achieve this level of skill wasn't achieved through training. She must have had similar experience. So, Yi Qian from the National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology wasn't as good as she looked. Fast reaction, skillful, experienced. It seemed like this female student from the National University of Science and Technology wasn't just outstanding. Also, her strength was not something that the three male students in front of her could compare to. Otherwise, why would the higher-ups leave her alone to infiltrate the ship and let her take over the next operation? The leaders' thoughts were naturally deeper than the students'. From the students' reports and the military's orders, they knew that Yi Jian was no ordinary student. Perhaps she had already killed enemies on the battlefield before. The leaders did not voice their suspicions in front of the cadet. Since the military did not want to reveal more information, and Major General Fu did not explain it in detail, they could only think about it in their hearts. They were not allowed to communicate with each other. The leader of the Naval Command College looked at the leader of the National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology. He thought that the National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology had produced another talent. Who would have thought that the National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology University of Science and Technology University of Science and Technology's leader looked at the leader with worry in his eyes. The leader of the Naval Command College couldn't help but pause. Chapter 35:10. Why did it feel like? His colleagues in the University of Science and Technology did not know that student Yi Qian was so capable. Of course, the leader of the National University of Science and Technology did not know how powerful Yi Jian was. He also did not know that Yi Jian had carried out countless big and small missions in their school. Even the principal did not know about this, so it was even more impossible for him to know. As a father, Father Fu knew how outstanding Yi Qian was. His daughter was able to follow the special forces to carry out missions abroad. How could she not be outstanding? Because he had seen it, his heart calmed down a little. When he heard Yi Qian remind the three male students to dress properly before entering the reception center, Father Fu felt proud and sad. He was proud of his daughter's attentiveness to the big picture, but he was also sad for her selfless spirit. Father Fu did not show it on his face. He calmly looked at the three young students who were worried about his daughter and said, "It's good that you guys are back. What's next is Yi Qian and the higher-up. You guys can go back to your rooms and sleep peacefully." Looking at the military uniform and coat in Zhang Minghong's hands, Father Fu gestured for him to take care of the clothes. These were his daughter's clothes. He wanted to take good care of them and wait for his daughter to wear them when she comes back. Senior Zhang Minghong handed Yi Qian's military uniform and coat to the Major General. Then he stopped and said sincerely, Major General, if there is any news about Yi Qian, can you immediately tell me? She stayed on the cargo ship alone to cover for us. As a fellow schoolmate, I am very worried about her safety. Yi Qian had excellent grades and excellent physical fitness. She was loved and respected by the entire school. Last year, she led the freshman and third-year students in a drill. As the commanding officer, she fought a very beautiful electronic battle. She showed us the importance of pseudo-base stations and information interference. She opened up a new topic during this drill. Now, our school has made her drill into a classic drill and compiled it into a textbook for future students to learn and reference. She once said something that became a famous phrase in our school. Even the leaders of our school remember it. Mr. Fu had no idea what she meant. Hearing her words, he could not help but ask, "What is it? I've never heard her mention it before." Exercises are not exercises for winning or losing. Exercises themselves are adventures, discoveries, innovations, changes, and progress. This is the meaning of exercises. The leader of the National University of Science and Technology repeated what Yi Qian had said during the maneuver between the freshmen and the third-year students. This sentence has given our entire school a lot of inspiration. It also made us deeply reflect on our previous maneuvers, which were too formal. We only talked about the end and did not pay attention to innovation. The third-year students who once practiced with Yi Qian have now become fourth-year students who are on their way to work. They wrote this sentence to the freshmen who joined the school this year. They hope that the freshmen can use Yi Qian as their role model to surpass themselves, defeat themselves, and write a legend. These were all things that had happened in the National University of Science and Technology. They belonged to Yi Qian's story, and also belonged to Yi Qian's legend. The other military schools had never heard of them. Now that they heard the leader of the National University of Science and Technology say it in a low voice, the leaders of the Navy and Air Force were shocked. They really didn't know that Yi Qian was so powerful. Li Xiang and Jiang Yang didn't know either. When they heard this, they were shocked by the huge amount of information. They really didn't expect that. The female student Yi Qian who covered for them was the role model of the entire National University of Science and Technology. Chapter 35:11. No wonder Zhang Minghong was so excited when he saw Yi Qian today. The two of them thought that he liked Yi Qian and was overjoyed to see the girl he had a crush on. Who knew that was not the case? He was so excited because he saw the role model of the entire school. Zhang Minghong said again, "Major General, Yi Qian is the role model of the entire school. We don't want anything to happen to her. So, if you have any news, can you tell us immediately?" Faced with the approval of the students and the leaders of the National University of Science and Technology, Mr. Fu could deeply feel that they were deeply worried about Yi Qian's safety. He said solemnly, "I promise you that as long as there's news about Yi Qian, I'll tell you immediately." "Major General, thank you." Zhang Minghong stood at attention and saluted Father Fu. The leader of the National Science and Technology University was even more nervous. One of the two outstanding students came back and the other stayed on the ship. Even if she had a self-defense pistol, he was still worried. Seeing that Major General Fu had said everything he wanted to say, the leader of the National Science and Technology University pursed his lips and asked Zhang Minghong to go back to his room to rest. When the leaders of the Air Force Academy and the Navy Academy saw this, they did not let their students stay any longer and asked them to go back to their rooms to rest. As for them, how could they still sleep? A good exchange meeting unexpectedly encountered this kind of situation. It was also related to the life and death of an outstanding student who was the role model of the entire school. There was nothing worse than this. Father Fu did not let the leaders of the two academies stay. He also asked them to go back to their rooms to rest. Only the leader of the National Science and Technology University stayed. The leader of the National Science and Technology University waited for his colleagues to leave. He could not hide the anxiety on his face and immediately said, "Major General, when will the troops from the military arrive?" "You heard it just now. Yi Qian is a very outstanding student in our school. He is a pillar of our school. If something happens to him, it will definitely be a loss to our country. She has a gun in her hand now, but she is still alone. If she is discovered, the consequences will be unimaginable." The other party was a group of people with guns. They dared to carry guns in our country. These people definitely did not knowingly break the law. They did not even put our country's laws in their eyes. They looked down on our country's laws. This kind of person could be called a terrorist with a danger index. No matter how good Yi Qian was, she was still only a student. She was a second-year student who had not even been sent to a basic unit. Father Fu saw that the leader of the National Science and Technology University was worried about his daughter Yi Qian. He felt a sense of pride. He smiled and said, "Since the higher-ups arranged Yi Qian boarded the ship to investigate the situation, that means Yi. And is that you? Yi? A." After the incident, she even knew how to disguise herself and protect the 3 students by herself. She also didn't forget to remind the 3 students to dress neatly when they arrived at the reception center for foreign guests, so that they wouldn't notice anything strange. This also shows that Yi Jian is very meticulous and knows how to protect her comrades as well as herself. The military did not let Yi Qian show herself. They only let her sneak onto the ship to provide support. As long as Yi Qian hides herself well, nothing will happen to her. Father Fu believed in Yi Qian's abilities, but as a father, he was also worried about his daughter's safety. Chapter 35:12. The leader of the National University of Science and Technology was not so optimistic, but when he heard Major General Fu's words, he pursed his lips. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. "Major General, Yi Qian's situation is a little special. It was not easy for her to get to where she is today. As the leader of the school, I can't bear to see her in danger." Father Fu said, "I agree with you. I will contact the military again and ask them to hurry over." The leader of the National University of Science and Technology's face darkened. "If the military can't get here immediately, why don't they send the police to control the scene?" Father Fu sighed. "It's not that they don't want to send the police, it's that they can't send the police. If they send the police, they might alert the enemy and cause a big fish to escape. This big fish is very big, so it's not something the police can handle." Father Fu could not tell the leader of the National University of Science and Technology how big the fish was, so he could only say so much. When the leader of the National University of Science and Technology saw this, he knew that he would not be able to get anything out of him even if he continued to ask. He could only ask the military to come as soon as possible. Father Fu also hoped that the military would send the police as soon as possible. Since Commander-in-Chief Xia said that his daughter's comrades would come as soon as possible, then all they could do now was wait. It was 11:20 p.m., less than 3 hours before the cargo ship left the port. He and the others took a military helicopter to Jin City and chose to land at a fire brigade station. They jumped out of the helicopter and quickly took the bus arranged by the fire brigade to the port. Qing Niao has successfully infiltrated the cargo ship, but there is no news yet. It seems that the cargo ship is heavily guarded, so Qing Niao can't move easily. This is the internal structure of the cargo ship. We will cut in from here and hide here. Pigeon held a tree branch that she broke from the greenery of the fire brigade and swiped it back and forth on the portable computer screen. Based on the target's cunning, the military wants us to take action before going out to sea. Before we take action, we have to confirm whether the target is on the cargo ship. According to the information provided by Qing Niao and the military's analysis, the target will most likely take this ship out to sea, but we can't rule out the possibility that it is a diversion. Now that the target is completely out of our control, whether it's a diversion or not, we have to take action. The cargo ship sailed 200 nautical miles into the open sea. After confirming that the target is not on board, we will jump into the sea and leave. The minibus was very fast, and the curtains on both sides of the windows were all down. There was no light in the minibus. The 6th Snowfield Brigade Special Forces were discussing the battle plan in the minibus. From the location where we jumped into the sea to here. Following the deployment of the pigeons on the screen, a deserted island appeared on the 3D color map. This will be our destination. It's 36 nautical miles away from the location where we jumped into the sea. The comrades who participated in the operation listened attentively and gripped their assault rifles tightly. They would board the bus as soon as it arrived at the port. Yi Qian, who had snuck into the freighter, hid in the shadows and did not move around carelessly. She did not know when her comrades would arrive, nor did she know what kind of illegal activities were taking place on the freighter. She could only play it by ear. She turned off the walkie-talkie directly so as not to alarm others. It was very cold on the ship, but the work continued. The cranes sent containers one after another to the ship, stacking them. The ship was brightly lit, but it was dark under the ship. There was a continuous glare at the top of the ship, and the light flashed in front of her from time to time, making it more difficult for her to come out. But she still had to come out. She had to figure out the situation. Chapter 35:13. After calculating how many seconds it would take for the beam to reach her, Yi Qian adjusted her breathing and began to prepare after finding a hiding spot. As the beam turned, Yi Qian's eyes sharpened. She quickly dashed out and leaped to the next hiding spot. She was very fast and had calculated the time to act. Just now, she had successfully escaped from her hiding spot after circling around the beam. At the same time, she received a message from Bai He on her phone. "We've arrived in Jin City. We'll arrive at the port in 15 minutes. When Yi Qian saw this message, the corners of her mouth curled up. They were here. She had to provide them with the latest news as soon as possible. They'd arrive in 15 minutes. She didn't know if she could find any useful information in 15 minutes, but she hoped so. With a slight movement of her slender fingers, she sent the number 66 over. The white crane knew what it meant with just one look. She turned the phone screen to her comrade and smiled. "Our female soldier, Qing Miao, told me that she's having a good time now. She's just waiting for us to meet up with her. Then you should quickly reply with the number 66, and tell her that we're also having a good time. We're just waiting to meet up with her." Sparrowhawk smiled. He and Yi Qian had worked together so many times that they were very familiar with each other. There was no longer a sense of distance between them. With Qing Miao on board, she'll definitely find a way to pass us useful information. Bai He, tell her to be careful. The most useful information is not as important as her safety. Comrades in arms cared for each other. After a long time, it was as if they shared the same life. It was even more important than blood brothers. Bai He quickly replied to Yi Qian's message. After receiving the message, Yi Qian could feel her comrade's deep concern for her through the screen. She didn't reply. Yi Qian chose to leave her hiding spot and began to gather information. They were almost here. She had to at least pass on some useful information. The workers were working in an orderly manner. Yi Jian stayed close to the edge of the ship so that she could hide in the dark. All the workers on the ship were workers. She was afraid that the workers couldn't hear anything. She needed to search for them. Yi Qian didn't know where to start looking for useful information, so he decided to walk around the entire freighter first and see what was going on. She left the port at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was already past 11 o'clock. She wanted to collect some useful information before her comrades arrived, so she had to hurry. Time was of the essence, and he had to pay attention to his own safety. Yi Qian wanted to find out more information, but he also had to pay more attention to his own safety. Father Fu also found out that Yi Qian was safe. He sat in his room with his phone in his hand, waiting for the latest news. When he saw the latest news, a faint smile appeared on his solemn face. His daughter was amazing. As a father, he was proud of his daughter. The lights of the port outside illuminated the hazy night. From his position, he could see several ships docking at the port, and the cargo ships entering the shipyard for maintenance were also brightly lit. With so many ships docked, he really didn't know why the 4 students walked towards the problematic cargo ship, or the cargo ship that Li Chuhai might take to escape the country. Was this the will of the heavens? Was this the will of heaven? Did God's will want his daughter to personally arrest the mastermind behind his wife's death, Li Chuhai? It was probably the will of the heavens. Back then, Commander-in-Chief Xia and Major General Yang didn't agree for his daughter to participate in the operation to capture Li Chuhai. They were afraid that Li Chuhai would recognize his daughter and make her his target. Chapter 35:14. In the end, man proposes but God disposes. From the capital to Jin City, his daughter was still involved. It was God's will. It was God's will. Father Fu stood in front of the window with a solemn expression. He took out his wallet and looked down at his wife's photo that he had been treasuring. He gently stroked the photo and said softly, "Hongmei, look, after such a long detour, the more I don't want my daughter to face the person who killed you, the more I don't want her to meet the person who killed you." But in the end, she still met him and coincidentally found the cargo ship that Li Chuhai escaped from the country. If this is really God's will, you must bless our daughter so that she can catch the mastermind behind your death, so that she can smoothly catch Li Chuhai and catch the mastermind who has been at large for more than 20 years. Don't let him do evil again. It was dark outside the window. Only the lights at the port were bright, illuminating all the workers working hard in the cold wind. The hard-working workers didn't know what was in the containers they were moving. They only knew that if they didn't go home during the new year, they would be paid double the salary. It was hard to earn money, especially for people who could only rely on their physical strength. It was even harder for them to earn money now while they could still use their strength. When they were old, no one would want to earn money even if they wanted to. Hearing the creaking sound of the containers, Yi Qian carefully moved closer. She planned to go near the cabin to see if she could find anything. There were people in the cabin who looked outside from time to time and then sat back down. There were a total of 8 people in the cabin. They were all wearing crew uniforms, but they weren't staff on the ship. Their backs were tense, their muscles were well developed, and their eyes were bloodthirsty. When it was 12 o'clock, a mobile phone vibrated. A man immediately pressed the answer button and put the phone to his ear. He only said a simple, "Hello." Someone on the other side of the phone spoke in a low voice. The words were not short, at least 10 seconds. The man who answered the phone listened and nodded. "Okay, I understand." The atmosphere in the cabin was a little tense. They were all waiting for the phone call. Now that the phone call had come, what was the next plan? The next plan was to set sail on time. Tell the brothers outside that the boss chose to board the ship at sea. After the goods are loaded, the ship will set sail on time. After ending the call, the man glanced at everyone on the ship with a gloomy gaze. The entry of 4 thieves made the boss change the route at the last minute. The boss is already very angry. If there are any more problems, all of us will go back and accept our punishment. He spoke in pure English, so everyone could understand him. Someone came out of the cabin. Not long after, Yi Qian saw that the workers were working at a much faster pace. Their yo-ho sounds were getting louder, as if there was not enough time to hurry up. Yi Qian was wearing an ill-fitting security guard uniform. He lowered his head and walked past a staff member. Then, he walked past 2 containers and started from the middle of the cargo ship towards the stern. She walked at a moderate pace, just like an ordinary security guard. She didn't attract anyone's attention. There were too many crew members on the ship, and not everyone knew each other. As he walked past the noisy container area, Yi Qian thought for a moment and turned on the walkie-talkie again. The walkie-talkie that was turned on had a faint buzzing sound from time to time. Other than that, there was no other sound. After a few minutes, the walkie-talkie was still as quiet as before. Yi Qian didn't turn off the walkie-talkie directly this time. He lowered the volume to the lowest to see if he could get any clues from it. Chapter 35:15. She turned the walkie-talkie on and off and did not have any other requests. She just hoped that the man she had not killed would make some noise and see if she could get some information out of him. At this time, Bai He, Pigeon, and the other 5 people had already sneaked into the harbor and started to approach the cargo ship. For them, it would be easy to lure away the security guards at the entrance, but no one did so. Instead, they threw out the ropes with hooks in their hands and hooked them onto a large pillar at the harbor. Then, the 6 of them quickly climbed onto the harbor with the rope. As a result, their backs were almost wet from the cold seawater. The seawater continued to slap against the waves, creating a hua-hua sound. The waves hit the shore and splashed high, wave after wave. The hua-hua sound rose and fell one after another, playing out the music of nature. The man that Yi Qian had not killed was pacing back and forth near the container ship. He only picked up the walkie-talkie when he heard a message from the ship. At this time, Yi Qian had already separated from this person for an hour. He spoke in a foreign language, which made the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces who had already sneaked in a cold look. These people were all illegal immigrants, but they were not mercenaries. Our country could be said to be a restricted area for mercenaries. In the 1990s, mercenaries had entered the country, but as the country grew stronger and the military grew stronger, mercenaries did not dare to enter our country easily. If they were not mercenaries, then they must be similar to the black market bodyguards provided by foreign underground forces. After the man finished speaking, Pigeon lightly made a hand gesture, indicating that they should not disturb him and continue to approach the cargo ship. He said to Pigeon. He just said that his partner had boarded the ship and there was no news until now. We received news that Yi Qian killed a guy. Could it be this guy's partner? It's possible. Pigeon replied very softly, so softly that the sound of the waves hitting the shore could drown out his voice. We have to inform Qing Niao. We can't let them get suspicious. Once the people below became suspicious, then it would be troublesome. There was no other way to contact Yi Qian except through text. Yi Qian received the text and was about to sneak up to the 2nd floor when her phone vibrated. She slowly lowered her hands and hid in a dark corner with her clothes covering her face. The text message made Yi Qian a little worried. She could speak English, but another foreign language. She really did not know how to reply. After a while, Yi Qian lowered his voice to that of the target who had been washed away by the seawater. He pinched his nose a little and contacted the target who was about to be wiped out under the boat in broken Mandarin. Soon after, Bai He and Yao Zi, who were covering the rear, heard a voice coming from that person's walkie-talkie. For some reason, they thought of Yi Qian. She had disguised herself as a man and contacted the outside world. Yi Qian knew how to imitate the voices of men whose voices were lower in pitch. They had seen it before. She could imitate the voices of Q King and Pigeon. This was not a ventriloquism, but a technique that changed the pronunciation of the voice. Just like how Kuan Dan, who was disguised as a man, changed her original voice and used a different kind of vocal cords to produce her voice. Bai He and Yao Zi did not pay any more attention to her after hearing her reply. They kept their guard up as they sneaked into the ship. It was Yi Qian's contact with the man below that gave her some information. As expected, their intrusion alerted the other party and changed their original plan. Chapter 35:16. However, he had no idea what kind of plan it would be. Yi Qian's eyes darkened. He was most afraid that Li Chuhai would notice something was amiss and immediately change his escape route. If that happened, all their efforts tonight would be in vain. Hopefully, the 4 security guards would be able to deceive Li Chuhai and make him change his way of boarding the ship instead of choosing another way out. Yi Qian immediately sent the news to Bai He's phone. Soon, Commander-in-Chief Xia received the latest news. Seeing this, his face was extremely serious. His aura was suppressed to the point that even the people in charge of the National Defense and Military Commission could feel Commander-in-Chief Xia's anger. He has already escaped from the capital. If we let him escape from Jin City, our military deployment will be a joke. This person, we can't let him escape. National Defense, send people to lock onto the city's sky eyes and high-speed sky eyes. Investigate all suspicious vehicles. Even if we are looking for a needle in a haystack, we must find this needle. The National Defense sent people to lock onto the sky eyes of Jin City. Without going through the Jin City traffic police, they directly hacked into the Sky Eyes system and completed the system connection. This was to prevent Old Man Li from getting any clues from his contacts and informing Li Chuhai to change his escape route again. Capturing a criminal with a huge background and power was not easy. Especially when the other party was well prepared, it was even more difficult. No matter how difficult it was, they had to capture him. They had to end it tonight. Commander-in-Chief Xia gave the order. At the same time, the highest leader in the Great Hall gave the order overnight. No matter what method you use, you must capture this person. If he is alive, I want to see him. If he is dead, I want to see his corpse. This meant that there was no need to capture him alive. They could shoot as soon as they saw him. Pigeon and the others received the latest order and secretly curled their lips. This made things easier. They didn't have to think about how to capture him alive and shoot as soon as they saw him. As for where to shoot, the open sea was the best choice. However, they had to confirm that the target was on the ship first. Li Chuhai had to get on the ship. If he didn't get on the ship tonight, he would never be able to leave the country and return to the land that set his soul free. There, all crimes could be covered up with money and all problems could be solved with force. There was no need to worry about being captured one day and escaping the next. There, he was the king. The local government didn't care. He was the king who did whatever he wanted. Why? Because he was rich, he had a lot of money. Whatever currency the other party wanted, he could use that currency to satisfy them. Humans were born to live for money, power, and desire. If they didn't even have these 3 things, they were destined to be ruthlessly trampled in the mud for the rest of their lives, never to rise again. He, Li Chuhai, was not short of money. He had never been short of money when he was young, let alone when he grew up. He could have whatever he wanted, but this kind of life was not exciting enough. It was so dull that the beast in his chest was locked up in an iron cage. He could only bare his fangs and brandish his claws in the depths of his heart, wanting to break free from the cage and completely release himself. All of this was impossible in the country. In the end, he was sent abroad in such a sorry state, but in less than a month, his soul was released, and the beast in his heart finally broke free. How beautiful, how desirable! Today he had obtained so much, and in the future he would obtain even more. You want to capture me? Heh, you didn't catch me back then, so don't even think about it now. A bunch of trash. Li Chuhai, who was facing the sea and listening to the sound of the waves, laughed softly. Chapter 35:17. Standing in the darkness, he stared at the other side of the sea. His laughter was low, like the sound of a beast that made people shiver. He laughed for a long time before he gradually stopped. It was late at night and the sea seemed to have become flat. Only the sound of the waves could be heard. A long siren sounded. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the cargo ship sailed out of the port. Boss, there's no problem. The cargo ship has left. You can take the speedboat. Assistant Zhu stood beside him and ended the call. He said respectfully, "They have checked all the places and confirmed that it's safe." Li Chuhai did not move. He stood in the cold wind for at least 10 minutes before he returned to the car. After another half an hour, he said, "Contact them again." It would be difficult to get off the ship once he got on. He did not want to get off. He had to leave safely. It was better to be cautious. Assistant Zhu responded and followed the order to contact the cargo ship that had left. He received the same reply. There was no problem. Li Chuhai said faintly, "Set off. Don't be too fast." Li Chuhai did not lower his guard even after repeated confirmation. It was because of his cunning that he was able to break through the siege and reach Jin City. Assistant Zhu bowed in acknowledgement. Then, he asked, "When do you want me to send a letter to Old Master? Also, what are your arrangements for Madame Li?" "You don't have to alert Old Master. He already knows. As for my sister, you don't have to reply to her. I'll send her the money when we're abroad. You don't have to deal with the Frozen Company's assets. It's already an empty shell and is not worth much. As for the frozen money in the bank, it's a fee for sending them away. They must have invested a lot of police and military forces to chase me for so long. I'll give them some money to comfort them." There was no hiding the disdain in his tone. Assistant Zhu did not have any objections. He dutifully arranged for his boss to board the speedboat. He only turned and left when the speedboat could no longer be seen on the calm sea. When the cargo ship left the port, the supervisor in charge of the security work counted the cash he had just received. He smiled so widely that his small eyes became straight lines. This money was so damn easy to earn. In the blink of an eye, he had earned 30,000 yuan. Pack up, go back to sleep." After finishing the security work and receiving the cash, the foreman was in a good mood. Facing the bone-chilling wind, he stomped his feet and shrank his neck, preparing to go home. Just as he was about to return home, a security guard ran over in a panic. Foreman, bad news, someone died." "What?" The smile on the foreman's face immediately changed. If Assistant Zhu had left 5 minutes later, he would have heard about it and immediately ordered Li Chuhai, who had already boarded the speedboat, to return to the port. Unfortunately, after watching the speedboat leave, he turned around and got into his car. He still had to rush back to the capital overnight, so he couldn't stay for long. It was such a coincidence that he missed the most important matter. He had to say that perhaps it was the will of the heavens. With Li Chuhai's cautiousness, if he knew that someone had died at the port, he wouldn't have boarded the ship. He wouldn't have even asked for confirmation and would have immediately turned around and left. However, he had already left and was preparing to board the ship at around 3:30. That was when the crew was asleep, so he wouldn't be discovered if he boarded the ship. When Father Fu learned that Yi Qian's comrades had successfully infiltrated the cargo ship, he waited until 12:30 before washing up and going to bed. Next, he just had to wait for news of Li Chuhai's capture. Chapter 35:18. The freighter that had left the port had already sailed into the vast sea. The gigantic hull of the ship was like a grain of sand in the vast sea. It was exceptionally small. When Yi Qian received the latest news from the military, he was preparing to meet up with his comrades. The message was sent to Li Xiang's phone. Accompanied by the dim light, Yi Qian read the message word by word. After reading it, every word was engraved in his heart and he could recite it backwards. "After going in a big circle, I still meet you in the end. Let's see who will be spared by the heavens. Li Chuhai, I'll be waiting for you here." Yi Qian put away his phone and said in a low voice. His pair of bright eyes were as dark as ink and as thick as the stars in the sky. The military had already found out Li Chuhai's escape route. At the same time, the military had also taken control of an important suspect who had been under investigation but whose background was as clean as a piece of white paper. It was this important suspect that allowed the military to confirm that Li Chuhai had left on this freighter. Other than this, he did not arrange any other escape route. This arrangement surprised the military and even confused them. With Li Chuhai's cunning, how could he only arrange one escape route? Shouldn't he have arranged for a stand-in like before? Why was there only one escape route to leave the country? Before the relevant military personnel could react, Commander-in-Chief Xia had already slammed his palm on the table. His expression was as cold as the cold wind outside, exuding a strong murderous aura. He indeed only arranged one escape route because in his eyes, he didn't need to waste any effort to arrange a second or third escape route. He thought that one escape route was enough. One escape route was enough for him to leave safely. One escape route was enough for him to look down on the military. Why did he only arrange one escape route? Because in his heart we are useless. Do you understand? He thinks we are useless. When he said this, Chief Commander Xia had already slapped the table several times in a row, until his entire palm turned red. Major General Yang could not help but lower his head slightly as he exuded a strong military aura. This was the first time that Major General Yang had seen the Commander-in-Chief so angry. Even when a neighboring country tried to kill our diplomats and staff in their country, the Commander-in-Chief was not angry. He even said lightly, "Since they don't want to be polite, we don't need to be polite either. Politeness demands reciprocity, and we should return the favor." The reason why the neighboring country dared to do so was because they looked down on our national strength. However, that was a country. Today, it was a person who had even lived in the military. This was what Commander-in-Chief Xia could not tolerate. If he doesn't get rid of him, how can he face the country? He must be eliminated. No matter what method, he must be eliminated. Commander-in-Chief Xia's second order was conveyed by Major General Yang to the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces, who had already boarded the ship. The 6 members, including Yi Qian, knew that as long as they saw someone, there was no need to talk nonsense. They were to shoot immediately. The Snowfield Brigade Special Forces opened fire. Li Chuhai had nowhere to run. Moreover, they were to shoot anyone they saw. There was no need for him to come back alive. This time, the military used the most violent but also the most satisfying way to get rid of Li Chuhai. It had to be said that when Yi Qian saw this order, she was very happy. Although they had issued similar orders before, if they could capture him alive, they would definitely choose to do so. Now, there was no need to think about it. Even if they could capture him alive, they would still shoot him. Chapter 35:19. The reason why the military was sure that Li Chuhai would board the ship was that they had caught an important suspect at the toll station. Assistant Zhu had never thought that he would be controlled on the way from Nan Province to Jing City, then from Jing City to Jin City, and now he was returning to Jin City. He had never thought that the military had been investigating him, an old employee who had left the company after Madame Li left Nan Province. The moment he was controlled, Assistant Zhu's face, which had never changed, changed. All the emotions in his eyes faded away in an instant, just like an old photo that had turned into a dark yellow color. There was no color left. His boss had once told him that he should never underestimate the military of his country. The military's resources were far more terrifying than he could imagine. Without deep contact, he would never know how powerful the military was. Looking at the soldier standing in front of him, Assistant Zhu knew that everything was in vain. If he had not experienced it himself, he would never have known that the soldiers sent by the military were so powerful. Just as he drove into the entrance of the car and was about to take the pass card, the soldier disguised as a toll collector reached out like lightning. His 5 fingers were like iron claws, and he was pulled out of the window in a flash. What happened next? Now that he thought about it, he found that his memory of that time was blank. He could not remember how he was pulled out of the car and how he fainted. He had no idea what happened in those few seconds. When he woke up, he was no longer at the toll station or in the car. He was in an empty room with white walls, facing two soldiers with guns. There was nothing else. He had been caught. What about his boss, who had already gone to sea? What time was it now? Had the ship sailed into the open sea? Had the military sent troops to chase after them? What about his boss? Assistant Zhu, who had a dull pain in the back of his neck, thought anxiously. He wanted to know the situation outside. He wanted to know whether his boss had escaped. He wanted to know whether the military had firmly grasped all their whereabouts. He wanted to know everything. Unfortunately, no one would tell him. Assistant Zhu, who knew that he had no way to escape, began the longest torment in the square room with shiny white walls. The cargo ship left the port and entered the night. The captain followed the route to the high seas. The workers on the ship had stopped their work and went to the bottom cabin to rest. The deck where the containers were stored had been blown by the cold sea wind for an hour. The corners of the deck were covered with icicles with the smell of seawater. Yi Qian was already with her comrades. In her hand, she was holding a manuscript that she had drawn at the last minute. Hiding in the gap between the containers, she slowly ran her fingers across the manuscript. She whispered, "There are people guarding the ship. There are 8 of them, and they are all armed with guns. If we take care of them first, it is very likely that Li Chuhai will be alerted and give up boarding the ship. So, I suggest that we hide one person at each spot. As long as Li Chuhai comes ashore, we will kill him first and then clean up the rest. Especially at this spot, we have to guard one person. I'm afraid that they will rush to the bottom of the cabin and kill the crew." Pigeon and the others had a 3D map of the entire cargo ship, but they didn't know where Li Chuhai's men were stationed. Now that Yi Qian said this, everyone had an idea. Chapter 35:20. Okay, we'll follow Qin Miao's plan. Pigeon looked down at the time. It's already 2:10 in the evening. At our current speed, it will take us around 8 in the morning to reach international waters. It's unlikely that the target would choose to board the ship in international waters. The speedboat doesn't have enough fuel to reach international waters. Since, before she could finish her sentence, the soldier in charge of security said in a low voice, "Someone's here. Disperse." All of a sudden, the Special Forces soldiers who had been huddled under the container disappeared in the blink of an eye. Their original positions were empty. Yi Qian was close to Bai He, so the two of them quickly moved back to back. They held their breaths as they stared at their respective security zones. Someone walked over and said something in a low voice. Yi Qian felt Bai He's back tense up. Yi Qian was very familiar with this person's voice. It was the person she couldn't get rid of in one go earlier. You have to get rid of him first. Otherwise, it'll be troublesome. After that person left, Bai He immediately said to Yi Qian. He was looking for his partner just now. He even said that he hasn't seen you since he boarded the ship. Fortunately, you pretended to fall into the water and talked to him with a disguised voice, so he didn't suspect anything. But now that he's looking for you, I'm afraid we won't be able to hide it. He'll definitely be suspicious. Yi Qian also thought of this problem and nodded slightly. She thought about the location of the container and said softly, "Give me 5 minutes. I'll get rid of him first." 5 minutes was enough for a Special Forces soldier to get rid of a target. Bai He made an OK sign. Soon, Yi Qian walked out step by step with her back against the container. It would be troublesome to keep him around, so naturally, she had to get rid of him in one go. Her method of getting rid of him was very straightforward. She disguised her voice and communicated with the other party so that the other party would come over obediently. The silver wire in her hand instantly wrapped around the other party's neck and tightened quickly. That was how she got rid of the threat. When she came back, Bai He waved her wrist and smiled. Not even 5 minutes. Not bad. Her comrades regrouped. When they saw Yi Qian return, they all smiled at her. They did not ask about the process. They only knew that the result was what they wanted to see. Pigeon continued the previous topic and added details of the follow-up operation. The military is sure that he will board the ship. I believe it will be before dawn. So, during this period of time, everyone has to be alert. Once the cargo ship slows down, something is bound to happen. In the end, everyone guessed that Li Chuhai would board the ship between 3 o'clock and 5:30. Within these 2 hours, everyone had to be on high alert and try to shoot accurately when Li Chuhai boarded the ship. After setting up a few important positions, the pigeon turned its attention back to its target. It could not speak openly on someone else's ship, so it lowered its voice to the point that even its 2 comrades who were on guard outside could not hear it clearly. I'm sure everyone knows what Li Chuhai used to do. Since he walked the same path as us, he should know how to protect himself. Moreover, he has established such a huge force abroad, which shows how strong his personal ability is. In other countries, one needs to have absolute strength to get to where they are today. So, we need to shoot accurately at Li Chuhai's ship. Don't be overly confident that we can do it. If the first shooting point fails, the second shooting point has to move immediately. If we move to the third shooting point, Li Chuhai will have enough time to counterattack. Only the first and second shooting points have the upper hand. The third shooting point can cut off Li Chuhai's escape route. Chapter 35:21. No one dared to underestimate Li Chuhai just because they had confirmed that he had boarded the ship. On the contrary, they were all on high alert and did not dare to underestimate him. He had managed to escape to Jin City by himself, and when he finally boarded the ship, they had cut off all his escape routes on land. It could be seen that the military did not let their guard down at all. Pigeon put away Yi Qian's sketches and said to her comrades, "The person we are about to face is not simple. Try to recall if there have been any 6-on-1 battles in the country over the past few years. I don't think so. He has enough influence to send out 6 people at once just to capture him. Brothers, be careful. The sea is so cold. I really don't want to jump into it directly. Wouldn't it be better to take an inflatable boat and paddle to the island together?" They were still as relaxed as they were before the battle. They could not help but laugh when they talked about it. When they left, Yi Qian had an assault rifle in her hands. Although it was not a sniper rifle, it was a Type 95 rifle that could be used in all-weather combat. It could shoot accurately at targets within 200 meters. Although it was still far from the range of a sniper rifle, it was enough. The 7 of them had already found their hiding spot and were quietly waiting for the crucial moment to arrive. The gunmen on the ship were also quietly waiting for the crucial moment to arrive. However, they were different from the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces outside. They knew the exact time Li Chuhai would board the ship, and each of them took turns to take a nap. Sitting in the speedboat, Li Chuhai braved the cold wind. He was fully equipped with thermal equipment. If he did not keep himself warm, he would be frozen before he even reached the cargo ship. The sea was very calm. There were magnificent waves in all directions. There were no other objects in sight. In the sky, Li Chuhai raised his head and looked at the night sky that was dotted with a few cold stars. The corners of his mouth curled into a contemptuous smile. After a while, he spat out a few words, "What a bunch of trash!" They were already out of the sea, and there was still half an hour before he would board the ship. However, there was still no movement from the military. They sent out a group of people, but in the end, they could not even trap him. A group of people could not even trap him. If they were not trash, then what were they? Even so, Li Chuhai did not lower his guard. He kept in contact with the people on the ship. However, he had already thrown the phone he used to contact Assistant Zhu into the sea. He had already switched to another phone to contact the people on the ship. After receiving the news that there was nothing unusual on the ship, Li Chuhai's lips curled into a cold smile, and he finally told them the time he would board the ship. At 3:10 p.m., the ship began to slow down. The lights on the ship suddenly became much brighter, illuminating one side of the ship as if it was daytime. At that moment, the light in the eyes of the Shui Special Forces soldiers was several times brighter than the light. The show was finally about to begin. The heavyweight target had finally shown himself. Keep an eye on the side where the lights are on, and the dark side as well. Keep an eye on the bow and stern. The pigeon's voice and the sea breeze slowly drifted into the ears of the comrades. It was not easy to wait for him. We cannot let him go. Yi Qian held the gun in her hand. Her position was equivalent to the second shot. Because she was a sniper, she considered that the Type 95 rifle's shooting range was 200 meters. If the first shot failed, Li Chuhai who boarded the ship would hide on the ship and the distance between him and the second shot would decrease. Therefore, it was best for her to shoot. Chapter 35-22. After confirming that the final target was about to board the ship, time passed even slower. Even the minute hand became as slow as the hour hand. Every minute that passed felt like several minutes had already passed. During this slow time, Yi Qian heard the roaring sound of the sea breeze. Gradually, the sound got closer and clearer. Finally, the speedboat that came from afar came into sight. The people who were supposed to receive Li Chuhai had already walked to the deck. There were 4 people standing on the deck and 2 people standing on the second floor of the cabin. Not only that, there were also a few people standing in a semicircle to guard the surroundings. They were just waiting for Li Chuhai to board the ship. In their hands, they were not holding pistols. They were all holding rifles. Even if they were to shoot blindly, their firepower was still quite shocking. Therefore, when these people showed up with guns, the Snowfield Brigade members who were hiding in the dark had the same ruthless look in their eyes. These people could not be left alive. Not a single one of them could be left alive. They were not afraid. What they thought of was that these people who entered our country with guns should not be allowed to escape. Bai He, keep a close eye on the cabin. Don't let them have a chance to enter the cabin. The pigeon's lowered voice was laced with a thick murderous aura. Wipe them all out at once. Yes. Bai He, who came from a scholarly family, responded faintly. His voice was just like his person, revealing the elegance of a scholar. However, the ruthlessness in his eyes was completely different from the elegance in his handsome face. You don't have to worry about me. I will guard this place. There were a total of 67 crew members on the ship. These were all ordinary crew members who relied on their own hands to make a living. They did not know that there was a problem with their cargo ship. This was not something they could know. The people who knew about this were naturally the people who were in charge of many people. Therefore, even if the crew felt that the cargo ship had stopped and wanted to take a look, they were stopped. The word maintenance was enough to dispel any doubts they had. They really thought that the cargo ship needed maintenance. The huge cargo ship finally came to a stop. Someone threw down a rope ladder, and time seemed to slow down again. It was so slow that it seemed to have stopped. For a long time, there was no movement at the bottom of the rope ladder. Yi Qian's eyes darkened like dark clouds. They grew deeper and deeper, forming a vortex. The rope ladder was still moving. It was very light, as if the people below were not in a hurry at all. They were strolling leisurely, step by step. It was not unreasonable for the military to be so cautious. Li Chuhai had never been afraid from the beginning to the end. If he was afraid, he would not have been able to come up so slowly like now. The first one to arrive wasn't Li Chuhai, but the man driving the speedboat. He was a black man, very tall and strong, wearing a windproof coat. When he held onto the railing with one hand, it felt like the railing was bent by him. Even though he was very strong, he was quite agile. He didn't need anyone to help him jump over. Then, he stood in front of the rope ladder like an iron tower, using his body to protect Li Chuhai who was about to climb up. Damn it! They're so vigilant. They're already here, but they're still so careful. Their line of sight from the first firing position is completely blocked. They can't identify the target. The loon at the first sentry post gritted his teeth. The second firing position is probably going to be difficult too. They're all surrounded. They've all formed a human wall. Li Chuhai would never let himself take risk. He first climbed up the rope ladder, then used the human wall as cover to get onto the ship. The tall and strong black man blocked him completely, making it impossible for the loon at the first firing position to find a firing position. Chapter 35-23. He was shooting from the front and happened to be facing the black man, who was as sturdy as an iron tower. Yi Qian was already moving quickly. An outstanding sniper did not only have to find a shooting spot to shoot, but also had to be able to react quickly and find the best shooting spot in a blind spot. I'll shoot. I'll shout 1, 2, 3, and everyone will fire at the same time. Everyone aim at one target and shoot one target per bullet. Yi Jianin had already searched around the ship before. Now she moved very fast. It only took a short time for her to move from one shelter to another. Since they did not even have a chance to shoot from the first shooting spot, they would leave it to the sniper, Yi Qian, to take the first shot. The veteran members of the Snowfield Brigade were all confident in their comrade Yi Qian's ability. If Yi Qian said so, they would definitely be able to do it, because she was Qing Niao, their comrade. They trusted her so much and had such tacit understanding. Li Chuhai was an experienced wolf. Even though he was hiding in the human wall, he seemed to have sensed something. He glanced at the top of the cargo ship and asked calmly, "You checked inside and out, right?" "We checked everything. There's nothing suspicious," someone answered him. Even so, Li Chuhai did not immediately look away from the top of the cargo ship. He even suddenly adjusted his position and walked a few more steps before looking away from the top of the cargo ship. Could it be that he was being chased so closely these past 2 days that he was hallucinating? Retracting his gaze, Li Chuhai's brows furrowed slightly. Was it really an illusion? Why did it feel like someone was really watching him? But now, he did not feel like he was being watched. Of course, he did not feel like he was being watched. Yi Qian asked his comrades to aim at the human wall, especially the black man. And she aimed at Li Chuhai, who was in the crack. Adjusting, fine-tuning again, aiming, fine-tuning. Yi Jian adjusted the aiming tool according to the steps these people took, the arc of their arms, and the entire walking route until the corners of her mouth curled up slightly. She said softly, 1, 2, 3. Shoot. Bang. Bang, 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 bang. The first gunshot rang out, followed by a series of gunshots. Yi Qian fired the first shot. His teammates, who had great teamwork, fired almost at the same time. Instantly, the entire deck was in an uproar. Li Chuhai's kneecap was shattered by the bullet, and the bullet penetrated through the gap between the knee joint with great lethality. The 5.8 mm bullet from the Type 95 automatic rifle could penetrate an 8 mm steel plate within 100 meters and still cause a small amount of damage. Yi Qian's shot was within 100 meters. No matter how hard Li Chuhai's bones were, they were not as hard as an 8 mm steel plate. No matter how fast Li Chuhai's reaction was, he couldn't be faster than a sniper who had been trained all year round. Li Chuhai's first reaction when he was shot in the knee was naturally to go weak in the knees. Yi Jian's second shot had already arrived. Bang! The instant Li Chuhai fell to the ground, his other knee was hit as well. It was also a piercing wound. At this moment, Li Chuhai had become a completely disabled person who could not move. And although the black man who was acting as a human wall was big and tall and intimidating in the face of bullets, his mortal body was useless no matter how strong it was. With such a big body, he was really a good target. He was shot in the head and half of his head was gone. White and red brain matter splattered all over the floor. Chapter 35-24. The gunshots were too sudden and the bullets came too fast. It was so sudden that the people who came to Li Chuhai's rescue panicked for a moment. It was so fast that before they could react, they had already fallen to the ground. A place with smoke and blood was a battlefield, and this freighter sailing on the sea had become a battlefield, a battle between good and evil. The bullets came, and the grim reaper came. The long scythe was swung and fell, and countless evil had all disappeared. Blood was flowing, and angry voices began to roar and fight back. These people blindly shot in all directions with the guns in their hands, and some of them destroyed the lighting equipment on the ship. The lighting equipment on the ship was destroyed, and the huge freighter was suddenly in darkness. Li Chuhai, who had been shot in both legs, was supported by 2 bodyguards, and one bodyguard quickly turned away. Li Chuhai, who was quickly carried away by the bodyguards from the black market, finally felt the pain while dodging. When he was shot, he didn't feel much pain. The bullet was too fast and too fierce, and it broke his kneecap and then went out. At that moment it was a bit like his kneecap was hit and then he lost all feeling. At this moment, Li Chuhai felt the pain. The immense pain overwhelmed him, and he almost fainted. He was also a person. In such a painful situation, he could still keep his mind clear. He questioned the bodyguard beside him angrily. "Damn, is this what you mean by safe? Someone sneaked onto the ship, and you still say it's safe?" If he wasn't on the ship now, if Li Chuhai wasn't injured, if he had other support, then the bodyguard he questioned would only end up dead. But now, Li Chuhai knew that he was in a bad situation and needed to control himself. Waves of pain came one after another, and Li Chuhai could only suppress the raging anger in his heart. No matter how angry he was, he could only condense it into a question. The person who was being scolded didn't dare to raise his head. They didn't know what was going on. Everything was fine, so how did something happen? Li Chuhai knew that he still needed their protection, so he didn't continue to scold them. Now was not the time to scold them. If there was anything, he could solve it after he got away. The most important thing now was to get away. Find a place to stop the bleeding. Let the outside hold for a few minutes. Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that his muscles were cramping, leaned his back against the bodyguard he brought into the ship. He kept gasping for air, but he gritted his teeth and continued to endure, holding on with his life's strength. He needed to think about who these people were. Why were they on the ship? Why did they know that he was on this ship? Since the old man at home had helped him, he definitely wouldn't leak his information. So, where exactly did he go wrong? Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that his forehead was sweating profusely, kept thinking in his mind. He wanted to find out what went wrong and made him suffer such a big loss. At this time, the entire cargo ship was shrouded in the sound of gunfire. Although the sleeping crew had never seen a chaotic gunfight before, they had been to some dangerous places after all, so they more or less knew a little about it. Therefore, when they heard the sound of firecrackers coming from outside, at first, some of them wanted to climb out of their narrow beds to take a look, but the experienced crew members stopped them and told everyone not to go out. They were still in our country's waters. The sudden gunfire definitely couldn't be pirate. If it wasn't pirates and gunfire, although they didn't know what happened, as long as the gunfire didn't come from their cabin, they couldn't just run around in panic. Chapter 35-25. Most importantly, there was no place for them to run around. Running outside was equivalent to courting death. Without a doubt, the crew's vigilance saved the Snowfield Brigade a lot of trouble. They just had to guard the entrance and exit of the ship and prevent Li Chuhai's people from getting close. Block the entrance and exit of the ship's workers. Loon, move and hit the speedboat. Pigeon calmly gave orders through the wireless mic, making the comrades more coordinated. Qing Miao, I'll leave the main target to you. Leave the rest to us. Yi Qian had locked onto Li Chuhai, so she was the most suitable person to take care of him. The other comrades expressed that they had no problem with it and quickly answered Pigeon's questions. Yes. No problem. I'll keep an eye on the deck. You guys keep an eye on the rear. Kill him even if he jumps into the sea. Deal. The comrades who had taken out 6 people in one go saw that their main target had hidden, so they no longer stayed where they were and retreated to the next advantageous position. Gunshots rang out. None of the targets could escape. Li Chuhai, who was still thinking about what went wrong, was in a sorry state. It could be said that this was the most sorry state he had ever been in since he was born. Even when he left the country in a hurry more than 20 years ago, he wasn't in such a sorry state. Both of his knees were pierced by bullet. Not only was he bleeding, but the pain was also something Li Chuhai had never experienced in his life. Now that he was in pain, it was so painful that he wished he could faint. It was better than enduring it. The sea breeze was so strong and so cold, but Li Chuhai's forehead was covered in sweat. When the cold wind blew, it froze into ice before it could drip down his forehead. Pain, it was too painful. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. He would never forget it a second time. He also never thought that he would be shot one day. He had always been the one who watched coldly as others were shot. He had always been the one who watched coldly as others struggled to get shot. But now it was him. Good. Since he was forced to fight his way out, then he would fight his way out. None of the people on the ship could leave alive. Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that his face was twisted, grabbed the black market bodyguard who was helping him to the side. His eyes were filled with ferocity. Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive, do you hear me? The bodyguards protecting him were loyal to Li Chuhai, and their existence was to serve Li Chuhai. Thus, they nodded their heads and replied, "With us here, we will definitely bring you out." These people were all Asians. They were originally from our country. Because their facial features, skin color, and hair color were similar to our country's, Li Chuhai brought all Asians with him when he returned to the country. Some of the heavyweight bodyguards were left abroad. They were probably waiting for him at the port where he would arrive next. Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that he was gasping for air, stared at his crippled legs. The 2 black market bodyguards were trying to stop the bleeding as fast as they could, wrapping his legs with gauze again and again to stop the bleeding. However, this was of no use at all. A piercing wound could not be stopped by simple bandaging. It required professional medical equipment. After they finished bandaging his wounds, Li Chuhai only left one person by his side while the other 2 went out to clear the path. His mouth was twitching from the pain, and his body was filled with hostility. He bit his cheek and said in a low voice, "No matter what it is, as long as it's not our people, kill them all. Everyone. Kill them all. Don't let me see anyone alive." Chapter 35-26. They were going to wipe out the cargo ship. The 3 bodyguards who were lucky enough to escape naturally obeyed Li Chuhai's orders. The man who Li Chuhai leaned against, the one who had been in contact with Li Chuhai, asked in broken Chinese, "Do you know who they are?" His eyes were bloodshot. "Who are they?" Li Chuhai gritted his teeth and said, "They should be from the military." He wanted to shout, but it was too painful. It was so painful that he had to force himself to speak. These people must have been sent by the military. They must have been sent by the military. They are not the police, not the Coast Guard. They must be special forces from the military. When did the country's special forces become so powerful? They actually managed to get onto the ship. Li Chuhai, whose eyes were red from the pain, said, "If they are from the military, you will be rewarded with $50,000 for each kill. 2 kills will be $100,000. What would make these bodyguards risk their lives for? Of course, it was money. They worked hard for money. Now that there was a chance for them to earn more money, how could they let it go? There were not many people outside. The Snowfield Brigade's special forces had taken out 6 of them, so there were only a few people left. However, these people were not ordinary black market bodyguards. Those who were picked by Li Chuhai were even more different. These people were well trained and had good teamwork. It was obvious that they had an unusual past. Facing the military, they dared to hold their guns and fight. Li Chuhai didn't bring many bodyguards back with him. There were 20 of them in total. 5 of them were killed last night. 6 of them were killed by pigeon just now. 2 of them were killed by Yi Jian, so there were only 7 bodyguards left. Other than the 3 who were with Li Chuhai, the other 4 had spread out and were hiding, waiting for the opportunity to shoot. Li Chuhai knew what he was doing, so he had some scruples. Now that the ship had quieted down, Li Chuhai, whose lips were already pale, thought of a vicious idea that could make the military hesitate. He said slowly with a dark face, "Tie the people on the ship together first, and kill those who don't listen." They needed to have bargaining chips in their hands, and Li Chuhai wanted them to use everyone on the ship as bargaining chip. There were 67 workers on the cargo ship, as well as the crew members and the captain, a total of nearly 100 people. Once they became the bargaining chip in their hands, the entire situation would be in Li Chuhai's favor. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade had thought of this, so they had been on guard. The whistling sea breeze blew away the smoke, leaving only the smell of blood mixed in with the sea breeze from time to time. The sinking cargo ship was like a ghost ship sailing in the sea, emitting a gloomy aura. Yi Qian carried the rifle on his back and held the railing of the ship with both hands. Slowly and gently, he leaped onto the deck as nimbly as a sea swallow. His other comrades used a combination of infrared and night vision goggles to get close to the few people who were also moving in the dark. Assassination was the favorite of the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. Now that they had the help of auxiliary tools, it was even more convenient for them to assassinate. "I have to shoot," Bai He, who was guarding the entrance of the ship, said calmly. His slender fingers, which were wearing combat gloves, gently pulled the trigger of his gun. Bang! After less than 5 minutes of silence, gunshots rang out on the cargo ship again. One of the people who tried to enter the cabin was shot dead by Bai He, while the other person quickly dodged and escaped. The assassination was carried out quietly. Chapter 35-27. The sound of gunshots came from the darkness. The target that was hit rolled down the stairs, blood flowing out. Finally, the body hit the railing and curled up into a ball, motionless. Li Chuhai heard the gunshots from above and knew something was wrong. His men were no match for the enemy. The special forces sent by the military this time were not ordinary special forces. Thinking of this, Li Chuhai clenched his teeth and made a prompt decision. He said to the bodyguard guarding him, "Jump into the sea and leave." He couldn't stay for long. While the bodyguards he brought out could still buy him some time, he needed to race against time to escape. As for using the workers on the ship as a bargaining chip in his hand, the other party had already taken precautions, and this plan was no longer feasible. Without a bargaining chip, the people he brought were no match for the enemy. If he did not leave now, only death would await him. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade had been guarding against Li Chuhai jumping into the sea. Just as he had the thought, Yi Qian had already reached him. The thick smell of blood came from the corner, attracting Yi Qian step by step. She had never thought that one day she would be able to kill her mother's enemy with her own hands, but now that there was such an opportunity, how could she let it go? Her footsteps were very light, like a cat walking on a beam. Her eyes were cold as she approached the target. Clear, clear, clear. The battle results of his comrades came through the microphone. Those who tried to attack in the dark were taken out one by one. Yi Qian's lips were slightly curved. The Snowfield Brigade had already taken the initiative, so how could they still have a chance to attack? There was a soft sound in front of him, followed by a few hurried breathing sounds. Yi Qian had already lightly hooked his finger on the trigger. Less than 3 meters away was where Li Chuhai was temporarily hiding. He was getting closer and closer, from 3 meters to 2 meters. There were no more subtle sounds, and even the sound of breathing had disappeared. If it wasn't for the smell of blood, he would have thought that the person hiding in front had left. Li Chuhai, who was helped up, was put down again. At the same time, he held a pistol in his hand and pointed it forward. Yi Qian could sense that someone was in front of him. Similarly, the highly vigilant Li Chuhai and the well-trained bodyguards could sense it as well. They had no choice but to return to their original positions. They had to solve the problem in front of them before leaving the cargo ship. Both of them could feel the danger around them, but neither of them made the first move. As for Yi Qian, he didn't make a move. Li Chuhai's knees had been pierced by her. If he didn't make a move now, he would have no choice but to take the initiative to attack. There was no other way. He was afraid that he would bleed to death. After about 3 minutes, Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that he couldn't even feel his legs, looked as ferocious as a demon from hell. He ordered the bodyguard who was protecting him, lure him out. If he didn't draw the other party out, he would be the one at a disadvantage. Either he would be exhausted to the point of bleeding to death, or he would be surrounded with no possibility of escaping. There was still a chance of survival if he lured them out and fought them head-on. Li Chuhai was a ruthless person, and a very smart ruthless person. In any crisis, he was able to fight for a chance of survival. That was why he had been able to live so smoothly for so many years. But today, his days of smooth sailing were destined to come to an end. Yi Qian's ears were sensitive. No matter how low he tried to lower his voice, he couldn't hide the fact that they were very close. The corners of his mouth curled slightly. He said calmly, "I won't come out. I just want to exhaust you." The clear and calm voice of a woman could be heard. Li Chuhai couldn't help but narrow his eyes. A woman? Chapter 35-28. The military sent out a female Special Forces soldier? Could this be a female Special Forces unit? When did the country establish a female Special Forces unit? Knowing that his hiding place had been completely discovered, Li Chuhai sneered and said calmly, "So it's a female soldier. How about this? I'm injured now and can't escape, but I don't want to die. I surrender. You can come over and tie me up. What do you think?" Although he said that, he signaled for the bodyguard to come closer. He intended to confuse Yi Qian and lure Yi Qian out so that his bodyguard could make the first move. This method was a little inexperienced. Yi Qian said in a low voice, "Now the entire cargo ship is filled with our people. Do you think you can escape? It's best if you surrender and don't suffer." Her answer made Li Chuhai's eyes darken. After a few seconds of silence, he sighed and said, "I know, so I surrender. You can come over. You know what's good for you. Ask your men to throw their guns over." His fake sigh made Yi Qian smile. It seemed that Mr. Li thought she was a fool. Fine, let him think she was a fool. Throw the guns over and ask your men to come out with their hands up. Be honest. Do you hear me? Li Chuhai really thought that the female soldier, who sounded very young, was a little naive. He narrowed his eyes and let out a long sigh filled with helplessness. "My legs were crippled by you. How can I not be honest?" He ordered his bodyguard, "Throw the guns out. They're after me, not you." The bodyguard seemed to hesitate. Li Chuhai shouted angrily, "Throw the guns out now and you can still get out alive. Quick!" He threw the guns on the ground and kicked them out. Li Chuhai said, "Okay, we don't have any weapons on us now. Don't worry. I'll ask my men to come out. Don't shoot. We're all just trying to make a living. Don't make things difficult for him." The rifles were gone, but the pistols were still there. "Don't worry. We keep our promises. Now I'll count to 1, 2, 3. Tell your men to come out." Yi Qian answered seriously. The bodyguard hooked the trigger with his thumb and hid the small pistol behind his back. Then, he raised both his hands and slowly walked out of the darkness. However, his body was not directly facing the front, but slightly to the side. The moment he appeared, Yi Qian did not even pause and immediately fired. His shot was quick and accurate, hitting the man in the chest. As the gunshot rang out, Li Chuhai's expression changed drastically. What a fast firing speed! As the bodyguard leaned back, he knew that he had fallen into the female soldier's trap. He had been tricked by a female soldier. The recoil of the 5.8mm bullet was enough to make the bodyguard fall backward. The moment the bodyguard fell backward, Yi Qian dashed toward Li Chuhai at lightning speed. Bang! 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 Continuous gunshots rang out. Li Chuhai, who could not move his legs, fired one shot, while the agile Yi Qian fired 2 shots. One shot was for cover, while the other shot hit Li Chuhai's right shoulder. Li Chuhai, who had been shot in the shoulder again, no longer had the strength to hold the gun. The pistol fell from his hand. He leaned against the cold hull of the ship and glared fiercely at the figure walking over. He had lost. This time, he had really lost. Yi Qian, who had walked out with a gun, ignored the other party's fierce gaze. He aimed the rifle in his hand at Li Chuhai's left shoulder and fired again with a cold gaze. She said, "Li Chuhai, do you still remember the martyr Sun Xueqing who was killed by you?" Chapter 35-29. The clear and cold woman's voice seemed to still be a little immature, and within that immaturity, there was a bone-chilling sharpness, causing Li Chuhai, who had almost fainted from the pain from the 4 spears, to suddenly narrow his pupils. His pale but still fierce face also had a slight change. He didn't change because of the female soldier's voice, but because of the name that came out of her mouth. It was a slight change of remembering the past. Sun Xueqing. Martyr. Now that he heard this name again, Li Chuhai, whose lips were pale, chuckled softly. Sun Xueqing, Hongmei. If you didn't mention it, I really would have forgotten. Now that you mention it, I do remember that I know such a person. The female soldier was like a red plum blossom on a branch in the cold wind. She had a pretty face and a sweet smile. When she smiled, her eyes curved, revealing her white teeth. At that time, she was the ideal partner in the eyes of many male soldiers. Just he knew that there were 5 men who had a crush on her. She was indeed a woman who could easily move people's hearts. Don't be fooled by her weak appearance. When it came to training, it was as if she was a different person. Even if there was a big puddle in front of her, and the puddle was filled with smelly water and mud, as long as it was training, she would climb over without hesitation. A very beautiful woman, a very stubborn female soldier. Unfortunately, she was too righteous. Yi Qian, who held the gun, didn't bandage Li Chuhai's wounds because she didn't want him to leave alive. She didn't immediately surrender him because she wanted to know more about what happened back then. If you forgot about my mother? How could you possibly instruct Yi Zhifan to raise me into a cripple? Why would you let old Madame Yi make things difficult for me? Li Chuhai, you didn't forget about my mother. Even if my mother was killed by you, you still used another method to harm my mother. Li Chuhai, you killed my mother back then. Now you have nowhere to run. Li Chuhai, who was in so much pain that his eyes were about to collapse, choked on the blood that flowed out of his mouth. He coughed. When he heard the female soldier mention Sun Xueqing, he had already guessed the identity of the female soldier. Now, his guess was confirmed. It really was Sun Xueqing's daughter who got into the military academy. Getting into the military academy and going on a mission with a group of special forces soldiers, it looked like he had been careless and missed out on many things. Even now, Li Chuhai still didn't panic. He was afraid of death, but he wouldn't admit defeat because of death. He raised his eyebrows and looked at Yi Qian, who was talking to him, from head to toe. Mom? Oh, after all this time, it turned out to be the daughter of an old friend. Were you also the one who shot me twice in the knee? Sun Xueqing's spear skills were not bad back then. Looks like my daughter isn't inferior either. You're here to avenge your mother, right? Not bad. You're more capable than your mother. I've underestimated you. Back then, I did kill your mother, but I really didn't think of killing her. She can only blame herself for not understanding the situation. Those who don't know what's good for them and are stubborn enough to go against me, then don't blame me for taking action. Facing Yi Qian, facing the daughter of the martyr Sun Xueqing, who was killed by him, Li Chuhai didn't feel guilty at all. He still felt that he didn't do anything wrong back then. After all, it was Sun Xueqing who wanted to ruin his plans and block his path. If she didn't ruin his plans and block his path, then wouldn't it be over? Chapter 35:30. Facing Yi Qian, Li Chuhai still shamelessly thought that everything was because martyr Sun Xueqing didn't cooperate with him, so he had no qualms about taking action. That's right, after Li Chuhai went abroad to do bad things, he always felt that he had to take action because those people didn't listen to him. Those who didn't listen should be taught a lesson. He had always thought so, and it was still the same. His bottom line wasn't morality, law, or conscience. His bottom line was that if you didn't cooperate with me, I could teach you a lesson with no qualms, including death. That was why martyr Sun Xueqing, who insisted on her principles and was loyal to her motherland, died. Until her death, martyr Sun Xueqing used her bottom line, principles, loyalty, and her own life to fight against sin and evil. She used her integrity and loyalty to declare war against those who had dirty hearts and dark human nature. In her previous life, Yi Qian had seen how dark human nature could be. Therefore, facing Li Chuhai, who didn't feel that he was wrong, she was able to maintain a calm expression no matter how angry she was. Li Chuhai, you colluded with Sun Yaozu to harm my mother. You should have known that you would end up like this one day. She didn't hope that the ugly criminal in front of her would come to his senses and admit that he was wrong. How could Li Chuhai think that he was wrong? From what he said, it was clear that he didn't think he was wrong. End up? I really didn't think that I would end up like this one day. He took a deep breath and felt the cold air around him. His mouth twitched, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness. He sneered and said, "Your mother wanted to die. Who can she blame? If your mother knew what was good for her, would I have taken action? You have to know that I had to do a lot of preparatory work before I could deal with your mother. This kind of thing, if there was a slight mistake, I would be the one in trouble. Your mother didn't know that a wise man submits to circumstances. She deserved to die young." He didn't want to make a move on such a beautiful female soldier. It wasn't that he was protective of her, but that there were many people who knew her. It wasn't easy to deal with her in secret. Who would have thought that in the end, she would be the only one who knew many things that she shouldn't have known. She even worked as an illegal worker on the ship, and her identity was exposed by a fellow villager surnamed Sunday. She deserved to die. She knew too many things that she shouldn't know and didn't listen to his advice. She insisted on reporting what she had found out, so don't blame him for being impolite. Li Chuhai panted. Unable to move, he leaned against the ice-cold hull of the ship. His voice gradually weakened. I spent a lot of effort to get rid of your mother. First, he had let the soldiers who had worked with her think that she was a spy. Then he had gotten rid of Fu Yuxing, who had been very close to her at that time. However, before he could do anything, Sun Xueqing had retired and returned to her hometown. At that time, he was not familiar with the process of his personal affairs and was very busy. When he found out that she did not report it to the higher-ups, he let her go for the time being. But she knew too many things, and her retirement made him very worried. Fortunately, she came back later, which allowed him to secretly take action. Even if he got rid of her, he was still worried. Since she was dead, he wanted her to die more decisively. From her life to her deeds in the army, he erased them bit by bit. Then he used the Li family's connections to completely erase her name, leaving only a lonely grave in the cemetery of martyrs in the southern province. Chapter 35-31. Sun Xueqing, this female soldier, was quite impressive. Before she died, she even cursed him to not have a good ending. She even said that no one knew of his sins now, but one day someone would. Through the night vision goggles, Yi Qian saw him lift his eyelids with some effort. Before he could lift them, he slowly closed them again. She saw the vicious smile on his hateful face and felt a little anger in her heart. I saw the photo of my mother's sacrifice. Her eyes were wide open and she died with a grievance. Did you say something that she couldn't accept? Taking 2 steps closer, Yi Qian lifted her leg and kicked the gun that had fallen into the blood. The blood that flowed out had turned into blood ice. When the gun was kicked out, there was still a faint trace of the gun left in the blood. Li Chuhai, who couldn't lift his eyelids, heard this and a cold smile appeared on his lips. When he spoke again, his voice was so low that it was almost inaudible. You want to know? No, how can I tell you? Your mother died so early. Of course she's dead. She's dead. The anger in Yi Qian's heart became a little sharper. She bent down slightly and, while Li Chuhai struggled to lift his eyelids, she reached the rifle in her hand towards Li Chuhai's shoulder. When Li Chuhai saw her move, blood gushed out from the corner of his mouth. At the same time, a strange laughter came from his throat like a broken bellows. Then, the gunshot wound on his shoulder was ruthlessly stabbed by a hard object. It was the barrel of the rifle. After it was stabbed, it slowly turned, just like how he had tortured Sun Xueqing in the past. You're more ruthless than your mother. No wonder Yi Jifan's family was no match for you. He made a strange sound in his throat and stared at Yi Qian with eyes that used to not care about human lives. His weak voice was still filled with ruthlessness. Your mother said a lot before she died, but I didn't want to tell you. Ha ha, I won't tell you. Yi Qian coldly tugged at the corner of her mouth and replied, I didn't expect you to tell me. I only know that after my mother was shot in the back, she was tortured by you guys. I only know that my mother might not have died from blood loss. She might have died from the pain. I know all of this. I'll let you have a taste. Heh, good enough. Ruthless you are. Ruthless. It really hurt. It hurt so much that he didn't even mind if he had to close his eyes. At that time, he squatted in front of Sun Xueqing, whose mouth was bleeding, and asked her with a smile, What's wrong? Are you so naive to think that someone will avenge you? Everyone knows that you sacrificed yourself on the battlefield. You should be thanking me for getting you the title of martyr, which can benefit your family. Martyr Sun Xueqing, you should be thanking me. The female soldier was clearly about to die, but she forced herself to hold on. Her beautiful eyes widened as she stared at him. Her bleeding mouth spat out a few words clearly. I'm not naive. I believe in justice. One day, someone will come to my grave and tell me that you've been brought to justice. I won't be able to see what will happen to you after I die, but I know for sure that your fate will be miserable. Because you betrayed your own country. You're going to die a horrible death. All of you will die a horrible death. He didn't know if it was because her eyes widened before she died, but at that moment, he felt a chill run down his spine. Then, Sun Xueqing said, she gave birth to a daughter. She wasn't worried that others would avenge her. She was only worried that her daughter would grow up to be a great person. Because she was the daughter of a martyr, the country would definitely treat her well. Chapter 35-32. As the saying goes, it's better to be safe than sorry. He really had to be on his guard. With Mr. Sun's reminder, it was the first time he had to be on guard against a 2- or 3-year-old child who would seek revenge on him when she grew up. At first, he was on guard, but then he gradually forgot about it. It wasn't until Mr. Sun mentioned Sun Xueqing's daughter in front of him that he remembered that he had done something ridiculous. Although this child looked more and more like Sun Xueqing, Yi Jifan's family had really raised this child to be a good-for-nothing because of his orders. He felt that things were a little interesting. Didn't they say that someone would seek revenge for her? Look, she couldn't even protect her own daughter and died early. He didn't know where she got the confidence that someone would seek revenge for her. He also called the person his grandfather had left behind to mention Yi Jifan, whom he hadn't contacted for a few years, but who had obediently followed his orders. After knowing that Yi Jifan also had a daughter, he went to investigate again. As he investigated, he found something interesting. It turned out that Fu Yuxing and Sun Xueqing were a couple, and the child that the old lady of the Yi family called a bastard was most likely Fu Yuxing's daughter. When he found out about this, he felt that it was interesting. He didn't like Fu Yuxing, but he had a great-grandfather. Although he had tried to make Fu Yuxing leave Sun Xueqing, he hadn't killed him in the end. Until now, this was something he regretted. But when he found out about this interesting thing, he was glad that he hadn't killed him. He thought about whether he should wait for him to return to the country and create a drama of mistaking the wrong girl. Later, some things happened. Sun Yaozu, who had laundered money for him, was suddenly killed by his bodyguard. The girl he had raised, who had been admitted to military school, made him a little wary. When he returned to the country, he investigated Sun Xueqing and Fu Yuxing's daughter, Yi Qian. He found out that Yi Qian had suddenly become enlightened in the second year of junior high. She had abandoned her previous cowardice and was very studious. In the end, she had been admitted to military school as the top student in the southern province. On the other hand, Yi Jifan's daughter didn't even pass the college entrance exam, causing him to have to postpone the mistaking the wrong girl drama. As he continued to investigate, he found out that Yi Jian had no foundation even if she got into the military academy. On the other hand, Yi Jifan's family, whom he had high hopes for, was full of troubles. His daughter, Yiying, was even more foolish. Instead of going abroad to build a good reputation, she actually went around making friends, ruining her bright future. Li Chuhai, whose body was getting colder and colder, knew that he didn't have long to live. His eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, to the point that he couldn't lift his eyelids several times. As for the pain, it was extremely painful. Even if he didn't bleed to death, he would die of pain. Who would have thought that in the end, it would really be her daughter who came to take revenge? Li Chuhai closed his eyes. He was very, very cold. He was so cold that it was as if his skin and flesh had been cut off, leaving only an empty skeleton. His breathing became weaker and weaker. Before his breath faded, Li Chuhai muttered the coldest words. The one who shot your mom is someone you know. The one who shot your mom is someone you know. Yi Qian put away the rifle and wiped the blood-stained muzzle on his clothes. Then, she said to Li Chuhai, who had already stopped breathing, if you can find the mastermind behind this, it won't be hard to find the one who shot my mom. Chapter 35-33. The shooter was someone else, but the mastermind was Li Chuhai. Now that the mastermind had been brought to justice, there was no need to worry about not finding the person who shot her mother. But what was worth discussing was that Li Chuhai said she knew the person who shot her mother. Who did she know who shot her mother? For a moment, Yi Qian thought of Chief Kai, who sent the diary over. Chief Kai and her mother were comrades, and he was someone she knew. But she quickly denied it. If it was really Chief Kai who shot her mother, then he wouldn't have such deep suspicions about her mother's death. He wouldn't have risked his life to get her the investigation file of her mother's death. So, it couldn't be Chief Kai. Then who could it be? Did Commander-in-Chief Xia know about it? Did they investigate it thoroughly? Even the mastermind was found, so the real person who shot her mother in the back should have been found as well. Yi Qian pursed her lips and slowly wiped the barrel of the gun. She made up her mind to ask Commander-in-Chief Xia when she returned to the capital to see if the military had found out. After wiping the barrel of the gun, Yi Qian slowly got up. She was about to turn around and tell her comrades, "Target cleared." But the moment she turned around, she suddenly stopped. Someone she knew shot her mother. The military might be afraid that she wouldn't be able to accept it, so they kept it a secret. Then, that would explain why Commander-in-Chief Xia avoided her in the meeting after telling her that Li Chuhai was the mastermind. It seemed that the person she knew had an unusual relationship with her. Faced with Li Chuhai's refusal to admit his mistake, Yi Qian didn't feel much emotion. However, when she thought about how she knew the person who shot Sun Xueqing in the back, and how they had an unusual relationship, Yi Qian felt a burst of pressure in her chest. She turned around and said to her comrades, "The target has been cleared." Even her voice was trembling. Pigeon, White Crane, and the others were still in shock. They didn't know that their number one target was actually the mother of their comrade. They had never heard Qing Niao mention it before. When they first heard it, their breaths froze. When they heard that Li Chuhai refused to admit his mistake and even said that martyr Sun Xueqing deserved it, they all wanted to rush up and shoot him a few more times. They wanted to see if he would still be so stubborn. Qing Niao could accept it calmly, especially Li Chuhai, who deliberately did not answer Qing Niao's question and added, "Do you want to know?" "No, how can I tell you?" The loon had already taken a few steps forward, but the White Crane reacted quickly and pulled him back. No matter how angry or hateful he was still satisfied with the result. At least this person was dead. But now they were worried for their comrades. She didn't expect that this bastard would make a Qing Niao before he died. Yi Qian turned around. They couldn't help but take a step forward. Pigeon was the first to speak. "The target is cunning by nature. His words cannot be trusted. Don't take it to heart. If you do, you'll fall into his trap." That's right. Since he admitted that he was the murderer of martyr Sun Xueqing, why would he arrange for someone else to shoot? To be able to shoot from the back, he's not an ordinary person. What if he didn't shoot? He's so cunning. It's impossible that he didn't think of it. He must have shot himself. No matter who shot, Li Chuhai is your mother's murderer. There's no doubt about this. Qing Niao, don't fall into his trap. His comrades spoke one after another to persuade Yi Qian. They were afraid that Yi Qian would fall into the trap and fall out with the people around her. Chapter 35-34. Yi Qian smiled at his comrades' comforting words. "No, I didn't take it to heart. If I really had any ideas, I could have just asked the military. Why would I have to think about it myself?" He answered casually. There was nothing wrong with his answer. His comrades all breathed a sigh of relief. The next step would be to clean up the scene. It was already 4:30. Pigeon ordered her comrades to clean up the scene. Then, she contacted the military and sent the news back to the military. Major General Yang, who had been guarding the scene, received a call and learned that everyone had been taken care of. The number one target, Li Chuhai, had been shot and killed. In addition, several foreign terrorists had been killed. He, who had been cold all night, finally smiled. But soon, his smile gradually disappeared. Pigeon reported everything that Li Chuhai had said to Yi Qian. Major General Yang's eyebrows were already furrowed. Commander-in-Chief Xia couldn't help but frown after listening to the report. He was a little troubled. He stood up and walked away from his desk. After a few steps, he sat down again. After at least 3 minutes, he said in a deep voice, "We can't hide this for long. Since Li Chuhai said it, Yi Qian will definitely know why he was so afraid of her during the meeting. She will know that Li Chuhai didn't lie to her. When she returns to Beijing, let's tell her the truth." Commander-in-Chief Xia made a decision. Since Li Chuhai had been taken care of and martyr Sun Xueqing's case had been concluded, it was only right for her to know who had shot martyr Sun Xueqing in the back. He was afraid that when the time came, Yi Qian, who valued friendship and loyalty, might not be able to accept it. Major General Yang sighed. "You're right. We can't hide it for long. She'll find out sooner or later. Why don't we just tell her directly?" "Okay, it's settled then. As for Li Chuhai, let the old man of the Li family know something. It'll only be beneficial for us. Commander-in-Chief Xia had already changed the topic to another important matter. This old man is obsessed with power and left too many people behind. It's time to clean up the mess. Ever since Li Chuhai's accident, the capital had been in turmoil. Now that the news of Li Chuhai's death had been leaked to the Li family, with old man Li's stubborn temper, he wouldn't let some people off even if he didn't make a move. The sky gradually brightened, and there was a light mist on the surface of the sea. The ship sent by the military arrived at the cargo ship. After cleaning up the scene, the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces placed Li Chuhai and the people he brought onto the ship. Then, they opened the water box to clean up all the remaining bloodstains on the deck. They also picked up the bullet casings one by one. If they didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to see the traces of the battle last night. Only then did they open the cabin door. When the crew on the cargo ship walked out of the cabin, they heard a ship leaving behind them. As for the scene, there were a few bullet holes. It was these bullet holes that let them know that there was a gunfight on the ship. As for who exactly it was, they didn't know. Even the captain and his assistant didn't know. When Yi Qian and the others arrived at the shore, Old Man Li received the news. He was practicing Tai Chi in his room when he found out that his son, Li Chuhai, who he had spent a lot of effort to protect, was killed at sea. His vision turned black and his body swayed. He almost fell down. Old Man Li couldn't accept the fact that his son had to die before him. He was already on the ship, but something still happened. Chapter 35-35. Old Man Li couldn't accept the fact that his son, Li Chuhai, had met with an accident. This was his youngest son, and his personality was the most similar to his own among his children. Compared to the two sons of his first wife, he loved this son more. Probably because he had a son at an old age, he loved him more than his older brothers and sisters. His son was smart and quick-witted. Not only was his personality similar to his, even his appearance was similar to his. In those years, his relationship with his first wife was quite tense. The two sons of his first wife weren't very close to him, but the son and daughter that he raised outside were the most pleasing to him. Because of this, when his first wife passed away, he immediately brought the son and daughter back, and at the same time gave them the status of birth mother. The son that he brought back didn't disappoint him. He was outstanding in everything since he was a child, and the way he handled things was more and more similar to his, which made him more and more biased. Later, when he entered the army, he was like the sun in the sky. His ability and means were all the shadow of his younger days. Later, something happened. After beating and scolding, he sent his son abroad immediately. Until last year, his son came back. He thought that the past had passed early, and no one would come to dig up the old scores. His most beloved son could also stay in the country and accompany his old father, who had entered the yellow earth at some point. But in the end, he, a white-haired man, had to send his son off. Old Man Li, who was lying on the bed, slowly opened his eyes when Old Lady Li screamed. That pair of turbid eyes showed the fierceness of his younger days. He asked the person who reported the news to him, "Who leaked the news? Investigate it. Investigate it." The person who reported the news was dressed in casual clothes and stood in a shadowed corner with his head slightly lowered. He sighed softly and said, "Old master, no one leaked the news. It was just a coincidence." A coincidence? Is there such a thing as a coincidence in this world? Do you believe it? Old Man Li didn't believe it. His arrangements were thorough and meticulous. Even the heavily guarded capital couldn't trap his most beloved son. Now that he was in Jin City, and even on a boat, how could something happen to him? Old Man Li still couldn't accept the fact that his son Li Chuhai had an accident. The only explanation was that someone among the people he arranged had leaked the news to the military. Old Madam Li, who was about to faint from crying, didn't believe it either. Hearing this, she raised her head. Her wrinkled face, which was still young and pampered, revealed an extremely sorrowful expression. She held old Master Li's hand tightly and sobbed, "You must uphold justice for Chu Hai. Old Master Chu Hai died too unjustly. You must uphold justice for him." "Hai, how? Master, I beg you. You have to get justice for Hai who died unjustly. He's the child you love the most. You said you missed him and asked him to come back, but he came back to accompany you without hesitation." Her only son was suddenly gone. Old Lady Li cried so much that she almost fainted during Old Man Li's temporary coma. If it weren't for the fact that she had to take care of the old man when he fell down, she would be lying on the bed with her heart aching. Her Hai she relied on Hai the most in her life. Even the old man had been left behind. But now, he was gone. The person she relied on the most in her life was gone. Who had killed her Hai? Who had leaked the news that Hai was on the ship? None of them were going to escape. None of them were going to escape. Chapter 35-36. Old Madame Shaoli was extremely sorrowful as she cried miserably by the bedside. Her usual timid expression had faded from her face, and there was already a bit of viciousness in her eyes. However, the sound of her crying made people unable to help but feel sad. "Master, your arrangements have always been foolproof. How could there be a mistake? I don't believe it's a coincidence. How could there be a coincidence under your arrangement? It's not a coincidence. Someone deliberately killed our Hai. Master, you must check it out. You can't let Hai die without knowing the reason. You asked the young master for help, didn't you? That day, the young master suddenly left after returning home. Did he know something happened to his younger brother?" Old Man Li's face suddenly darkened. His eldest son came back that day? Why didn't he know? Why didn't the servants at home mention it to him? Old Madam Li, who was crying miserably, didn't seem to notice the change in Old Man Li's face. She said sadly, "You're not in good health now. Let the young master investigate it. His own younger brother was killed. How could he bear it? Master, if it's not convenient for you to do it, let the young master do it." Old Master Li's expression darkened. Dark clouds had already gathered above his head, and there was already the momentum of a thunderbolt. He lowered his head and asked Old Madame Shaoli beside him word by word, "When did boss come back that day? Why didn't I know?" The person standing in the shadow looked at Old Man Li, and then looked at Old Madam Li, who seemed to be implying something. She pursed her lips slightly and swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. Old Man Li's favorite son was killed by the military. People who were familiar with Old Man Li's temper knew that it wouldn't end well. If someone had to be responsible for Li Chu Hai's death, it would be better to let Old Man Li's eldest son be responsible. They were all sons, and they were both flesh and blood. Even if he were to vent his anger on them, it would only be a matter of time. Facing Old Man Li's question, Madame Shaoli seemed to be frightened. She shrank her shoulders and looked up from her arms. Her neatly combed hair on her forehead was messy, and she looked even more haggard. She seemed to have not understood anything. She sobbed and said, "This is young master's home. Isn't it normal for him to come back? Usually, when first young master comes back, I don't tell you, master." After saying that, she raised her hand to wipe her tears. Her hands, which were no longer young and had lost collagen, slowly clenched until her fingernails turned white. The old man's plans were always foolproof. Hai had already escaped the capital, so there was no way she would die on the ship. That night, he learned that something had happened to Hai. The next day, the young master, who never cared about his stepmother, came back and left in a hurry. He had wanted to kill Hai for a long time, and now that he had the chance, he couldn't let it go. He had caused Hai's death. She would make him pay with his life. No. She wanted his entire family to pay with their lives for her hire. None of them could escape. Old Madame Shaoli was able to climb into her brother-in-law's bed and force her sister to death. How could she be as weak as she looked? When old Madame Shaoli was young, she didn't even have clothes to cover her body on the street. She didn't even have enough to eat. It was the unmarried old Madame Shaoli who begged her family to take her in. The two girls, who were not related by blood, called each other sisters. Old Madame Shaoli, a beggar, suddenly became the daughter of a rich family. Chapter 35-37. At that time, the late old Madame Li had never thought that she had taken in a venomous snake who used her weak appearance to hide her vicious heart. Not long after she got married, this 15-year-old venomous snake climbed onto her brother-in-law's bed, gave birth to children, and became an outside mistress. When the late old Madame Li found out that the good sister she had taken in had an affair with her husband, and even had an illegitimate child, old Madame Li fainted on the spot. Not long after the matter was exposed, old Madame Li first held her son and daughter and knelt at the entrance of the Li family's mansion, saying that she was guilty and begging for her sister's forgiveness. She even said that everything was her fault and it had nothing to do with her brother-in-law. She called out, "Sister, brother-in-law," but the children in her hands were the children that she had with her brother-in-law. Her vicious heart was shocking. At that time, old Madame Li was still more than 6 months pregnant, and her pregnancy was not very good. She did not have a moment of comfort when eating and sleeping. Just when she needed to calm down and take care of the fetus, the outside mistress held a son and a daughter and came to the mansion in a big wind and rain to beg for forgiveness. How could old Madame Li bear it? That day, she miscarried a baby girl who was about to take shape. After that, old Madame Li's body collapsed. After the miscarriage, she suddenly aged 10 years, and her body became weaker and weaker day by day. In the end, in order to not let the outside mistress take advantage of her 2 sons, old Madame Li forced herself to endure her illness until the 2 sons grew up. Later, when the second son went abroad to study, old Madame Li passed away. Old Madame Li, who had endured the death of her first wife, was good at acting. No matter when, she was timid and weak. Even if the servants at home said something loudly, she would be so afraid that she would secretly wipe her tears. Then, in the middle of the night, she would hide under the quilt and secretly sob. When old Manly asked, she did not say anything at first, only saying that she had a nightmare. After being pressed about this matter repeatedly, old Madame Li finally said it while sobbing. Just like that, in less than a year, all the servants in the Li family's old mansion had been cried away by Mrs. Li, leaving behind only old Madame Li's own people. Therefore, when old Master Li found out that he had arranged for his son to escape and no one mentioned it to him when his eldest son came back, the anger on his face made old Madame Li's heart tremble. The servants at home have always been arranged by your side. Is it that if anything happens at home in the future, they will only report to you and leave me aside? Old Madame Li, whose heart was trembling, turned even paler. She shook her head and cried, "Master, why do you have to say such heart-wrenching words? Young master is returning to his own home. Do the servants at home have to keep an eye on him at all times? It's not like you don't know my situation as a stepmother. Do you think I would dare to ask about the young master's return? He can come back if he wants. Why would he need to report to you? If that's the case, you'll say that I'm still foolish at my age." Although her heart was trembling, she knew that old Manly had taken her words to heart. She wanted to say a few more words, but old Manly, whose face was as dark as water, asked her to go out first. The eldest son and his second wife were like fire and water at the beginning. If even the eldest son came home and the servants at home and his second wife mentioned it to him, he would indeed scold his second wife for being foolish. Old Manly, who didn't dare to disobey old Manly, had to go out first. She wanted to stand at the door and listen, but she heard that old Manly had ordered the messenger inside to lock the door. Knowing that she couldn't hear anything, old Madame Shaoli went downstairs to the living room and called her daughter. Her son was gone, and only her married daughter could make decisions for her. Chapter 35-38. In the room, the informant sat on Old Man Li's bed and sighed. Old Man Li, I told you it was a coincidence. I can understand if you don't believe me because I didn't believe it either. No one knew that Chu Hai went to Jin City. The military didn't know either. However, there were a few people who sneaked to the cargo ship that Chu Hai was going to take. It was because something happened to them that the military became suspicious. You know that Chu Hai's situation abroad is already known in the country. How could they let Chu Hai leave the country alive? Even if there was a trace of suspicion, they wouldn't miss it. Chu Hai just happened to run into it. Old Man Li couldn't help but close his eyes when he heard that. His chest rose and fell for a while before he slowly calmed down. Who did they send? Sigh, that's what I wanted to report to you. These people, their origins are very mysterious. I don't know which unit they belong to. I don't have any information on them. Old Du also asked around, but you know that everyone is in a state of panic now. Some things aren't easy to find out. So far, I haven't found out which unit sent the soldiers to kill Chu Hai. Old Man Li was obviously not satisfied with this result. He narrowed his turbid eyes and said slowly, You don't even know which unit they belong to? Then you came just to tell me that Chu Hai was shot to death? The old voice was not as intimidating as before. Even if he spoke slowly, it was enough to make the person sitting by the bed tense. He replied, I came because I was afraid that you would take action outside first after you found out. You know the situation outside. The whole situation is very tense. If you take action for Chu Hai, your connections will be affected. You can't even find out which unit they belong to. With your experience, what kind of unit do you think it is? If it's a Special Forces unit, then it must be an elite Special Forces unit. You can slowly investigate if you want to know, but not now. It's best to wait until the news dies down before you show yourself. The informant analyzed bit by bit and separated the personal benefit. He slowly told Old Man Li everything so that Old Man Li could endure it for the time being. If Old Man Li couldn't endure it, then he would definitely be affected. After climbing to where he was today, he was no longer the young man who didn't know anything. He had to plan for his future. He couldn't drag himself down because of a dead person who committed a serious crime. His analysis left Old Master Li speechless for a long time. He closed his eyes and lay down quietly. His calm face did not reveal what he was thinking or planning at this moment. Seeing this, he got up and poured a cup of water to cool it in his hand. When Old Master Li woke up, he would pass the warm water to him. After about 4 or 5 minutes, Old Man Li opened his eyes. The informant handed the water over and said respectfully, You haven't drunk any water since you woke up. Drink some water to moisten your throat. He took the water and took a few sips. His throat was so dry that it felt like it was blocked by phlegm, but there was a hint of sweetness. Old Master Li handed the cup over and stared at the man who had become who he was today. He said calmly, You're right. Right now, I still have to endure it. Help me ask around. I want to know who fired at Chu Hai. I want to thank him properly. That's right. Thank him for doing such a great deed of sending off the younger generation. Chapter 35-39. The person who took the cup nodded and said, I will do my best to investigate this matter so that you can feel better. You have always done things steadily, so I have always been at ease. However, you still have to be careful. Also, help me take care of Chu Hai's son and daughter. When school starts, I will send them to the southern province to study, far away from the capital to avoid being targeted. After Old Man Li finished speaking, he saw the other person's surprised expression. Without thinking about why he was surprised, he asked in a deep voice, What, is it inconvenient for you? No, it's not. The person quickly shook his head and said, Do you still not know that the son and daughter that Chu Hai brought back are not Chu Hai's biological children? It was old man Li's turn to be shocked. When Chu Hai went abroad, he did not get married. He only got married and had children when he was abroad. After he settled down, he did not return to the country because of domestic reasons. The son and daughter that he gave birth to did not come back, but he sent photos. He sent photos of them from childhood to adulthood. How could they not be his biological children? The person told old man Li the news that he had just learned. After finishing, he said, It can be seen that Chu Hai came back prepared. Fortunately, Chu Hai was prepared. Old man Li's temples were already hurting. He could not understand why he had to hide who his biological children were from his family. What did his most beloved son do abroad that he had to hide? When the person saw that old man Li did not know, he suppressed the shock in his heart and stood up. It's getting late. You should rest well. I still have a few things to take care of. If there is any new news, I will report it to you. He bowed to old Manly, who had helped him before, and left with large strides. He had to return to the southern province. The southern province was not peaceful now. There was a big commotion above, and everyone below was tense. They were afraid that they would be implicated if they took a wrong step. Everyone was cautious, and he was no exception. The door opened and closed gently. Old Manly, who was lying on the bed, stood up and looked at the closed door. There was a dim light in his eyes. Every man for himself, and the devil takes the hindmost. These people, these people who had once received his kindness, were now so ambitious that there was no longer a place for him as their benefactor. Each and every one of them had their own plans. If Chu Hai was still here, no matter how many schemes these people had in their hearts, they would still be plotting and hiding. Now that Chu Hai was gone, thinking of his youngest son whom he loved the most, the white-haired old man Li couldn't help but feel sorrow in his heart. There were even tears in the corners of his eyes. Chu Hai was no longer here, the son he had high hopes for was no longer here, so what did the future of these people have to do with him? His eldest son and second son had never been close to him. Ever since the death of his first wife, the father and son had been like fire and water. As for his eldest grandson, Li Jinyan, because his second wife had done a few stupid things in the past, he had also been estranged from the family. He had treated the Fu family as his own family, and the Li family had instead become his maternal family. On his daughter's side, a married daughter was like spilled water. He never counted on her. Only his youngest son was the most suitable for him, and he was the most filial. However, the youngest son he was most satisfied with, and filial actually wanted to hide his biological children from the family. Old Manly, who was having a headache, couldn't understand why. Madame Li also knew that her younger brother Li Chu Hai had been killed. After hanging up the phone, she sat on the sofa for a long time and didn't come back to her senses until Du Jiai came out and saw her pale face. She was so shocked that she hugged her, and Madame Li slowly came back to her senses. Chapter 35-40. The heater was on in the house, but Madame Li's hands and feet were cold without a trace of warmth. Although she had regained her senses, she was still in a daze, as though her soul had left her body. Du Jiai was a little anxious. She held Madame Li's cold hands and hurriedly rubbed them. "Mom, what's wrong with you? Who called you? Was it Dad or brother?" She kept rubbing her hands, trying to warm Madame Li's cold hands. Gradually, Madame Li's fingers began to tremble. Then, she held her daughter's hands as though she was looking for someone to rely on. Her voice trembled as she said, "Jiai, your uncle is dead?" He didn't manage to escape. He was shot to death, because it was the death of her closest family member. Even the bold Du Jiai was so frightened that her face turned pale. She was stunned for a while before she said in a trembling voice, "He was shot to death? Who shot him to death? Who else could it be? Who else would have the guts to shoot her younger brother to death? Madame Lee, whose lips were pale, bit the tip of her tongue to make her voice clearer. The military said that he didn't manage to escape on the boat. Last night he's gone. Jai, your uncle, he's gone. As she spoke, Madame Lee's tears flowed out. That was her biological brother. Although they had not returned to China for more than 20 years, they had always been in contact with each other. From childhood to adulthood, the two of them had protected each other. Until the Lee family, the two of them were even more united against outsiders. But she didn't expect that the younger brother she had always protected would be gone. Her tears flowed uncontrollably. She was already a grandmother, but when she cried, her voice was louder than a child's. Her tears kept flowing, making Du Jie feel a little helpless. Mom, don't cry. There's no use crying now. Uncle won't come back just because you cry. Du Jie didn't have any deep feelings for her uncle, Li Chuhai, who she only knew existed but didn't know who he was. But since she was young, she had always received gifts from abroad. She knew that her biological uncle treated her very well. Now that she suddenly received such bad news, she couldn't accept it. Madame Lee cried loudly, and she couldn't help but cry as well. The mother and daughter cried together, and the guards outside did not know whether to enter or leave. They hurriedly called the Deputy Chief of Staff Du and reported the situation at home. When the Deputy Chief of Staff Du received the news, he knew why his wife was crying. Now that he was so busy, he was not in the mood to comfort his wife and daughter. However, he could not allow a fire to break out in his backyard, so he still called home. The meaning was clear. First, Li Chuhai violated the law and deserved to be punished. Secondly, if your maiden family has any requests, you must not agree. If you really do agree, you must ask yourself whether your maiden family or your children are more important. Third, although the Du family is now implicated, I, Du Mao, am a righteous man who stands upright and fearless. I will not abuse my power for personal gain. You can cry in front of me, but you can't ask me to do anything. After making these points clear, he hung up the phone. As for whether his wife would listen, based on his understanding of his wife over the years, she definitely could do it. Du Jie heard everything clearly. Seeing that her father didn't make a mistake because of this, she secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Dad was right. The dead can't come back to life. Moreover, her uncle deserved to be punished. Then the Du family had better not do anything. If they did, they would be unlucky. Chapter 35-41. With Du Jie's persuasion, Mrs. Lee gradually calmed down. She still wanted to go back to her mother's house, but Du Jie stopped her and said, Mom, if you go to Grandma's house today, what will happen to Dad? What do you want your brother to think? Little uncle deserved it. What's the point of you going there now? Also, didn't you hear what Dad said? Little uncle's case was not made public. If you go there now, Mom, what will you say if someone asks you how you found out about this? If you say that Grandma told you, will people believe you? No, they won't. They will only think that Dad told you. Since it's not made public, it's confidential. You're not even part of the military, so how did you know? So, they will only think that Dad told you. If you go to Grandma's house today, you will undoubtedly help outsiders to harm Dad. Du Jie's words shocked Mrs. Lee so much that she sat on the sofa for a long time. After a while, Mrs. Lee's eyes turned red and she looked like she had aged a few years. She smiled bitterly and said, Go back to your room. I want to be alone. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. I won't be impulsive. Go back to your room. I want to be alone. She wanted to be alone and think about what crime her brother had committed. Why did the military want to hunt him down at all costs? Too many things had happened in the past 2 days. She had yet to settle the past, and now there were more waves. She was so confused that her head hurt. She needed to calm down. The Li and Du families were in turmoil because of Li Chuhai's death. Yi Qian, who had parted ways with her comrades, did not immediately return to the capital. She was a student participating in the 3-day exchange program. Today was only the second day. How could she go back early? Pigeon, Bai He, and the other 4 comrades did not need to say anything after completing their mission. They quickly left after going ashore. The higher-ups would take care of the rest. This was also why Old Man Li didn't know which Special Forces unit they belonged to. The Snowfield Brigade didn't belong to any unit and didn't even exist in the military system. No matter how capable Old Man Li was, there was no way he would know. After waiting for an entire night, Father Fu already knew that Yi Qian had completed his mission. He had been waiting outside the foreign guest reception center since early in the morning. When he saw his daughter walking over, Father Fu quickly walked over. When Yi Qian saw his father Fu hurrying over, he couldn't help but smile and quicken his pace. She walked over with a smile on her face. Her dark eyes were as clear as a mirror, as if they had been washed by water. "Dad, you didn't wait the whole night, did you? The dark circles under your eyes are bigger than mine." Father Fu, who had been nervous the whole night, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You go back to your room and rest for a while. We'll gather at the military port at 1:30. Because of the incident at the civilian port, they temporarily couldn't enter or leave. Therefore, they cancelled their morning trip and went directly to the military port in the afternoon. When the leaders and the 3 male students found out that Yi Qian had returned unharmed, they all breathed a sigh of relief. When they got on the bus in the afternoon, Yi Qian smiled and said, "I was hiding on the ship and didn't dare to come out." They found the ship based on the phone signal. Later, they heard gunshot. When I came out, the ship was clean. Until now, I only know that they were going to catch a very important criminal. Then, he whispered, "I don't know who it is." Chapter 35-42. Father Fu smiled and said, "Care about what you should care about. What you shouldn't care about is not something you should care about. You don't have to ask about it." The leaders also said similar things. The leader of the National University of Science and Technology looked at Yi Qian sternly and said, "Not letting you know is to protect you. Since you are back, you are not allowed to mention what happened last night. Do you hear me?" Then he said to another student, "You too. Don't mention it again." Yi Qian and Zhang Minghong humbly accepted the advice and said that they would not ask about it again. The leaders of the Naval Command Academy and the Air Force Academy also reminded their outstanding students to keep their mouths shut and not reveal any information to the outside world. Li Xiang and Jiang Yang also said that they would not mention this matter to anyone. However, they had seen Yi Qian's ruthlessness in killing people. They had a sense of respect for Yi Qian. They also felt that Yi Qian was different from the 3 of them. When they talked to him, they were more or less careful. Yi Qian knew in his heart, but he did not say it out loud. Just like the day before, he walked and sat quietly. Only when someone asked him a question would he answer softly. After the 3-day exchange meeting, Yi Qian returned to the capital with Father Fu. In the past 2 days, she did not tell Father Fu what she was thinking about. She wanted to know who it was before telling Father Fu. However, she did not know that Father Fu already knew. On the 10th day of the first month, Yi Qian returned to the capital. She did not rest in the middle and arrived at the military headquarters around 1 in the afternoon. Father Fu, who had just finished the exchange meeting, also had to work. Yi Qian went to look for Commander-in-Chief Xia. At this time, she was already sitting in the office. There was no one in the office, so she had to wait. This time, she had to wait for a long time. Yi Qian hugged her chest and slept in the office. She only woke up when she heard the sound of the door being unlocked. She looked at her watch and saw that it was 4:17 in the afternoon. Commander-in-Chief Xia and Major General Yang were talking as they walked in. When they saw Yi Qian standing up and saluting them, They waved their hands and gestured for her to sit down. They said to Major General Yang, "That's it for now. You go to your work. I want to talk to little Yi." He already knew that Yi Qian was waiting for him in the office. He also knew why she was here today. She would know sooner or later. He sat down and took out a camouflage folder from his office drawer. "Take a look at this. After reading it, you'll know who shot Sun Xueqing and the reason for him to shoot." "What's the reason?" Yi Qian, who thought it would take some effort to find out, immediately stood up and took the folder. She was afraid that Commander-in-Chief Xia would go back on his word. "Read it slowly. Don't get agitated after reading it. We have investigated everything clearly. I hope you can treat it calmly." Seeing her open the folder, Commander-in-Chief Xia gave her a heads-up. Yi Qian read it slowly, paragraph by paragraph. The investigation was very detailed. From when her mother became a spy to who she met and what she found out, it was an investigation report. It was also her mother's life story. She read it page by page. When she saw that someone was misled by Li Chuhai into thinking that her mother was a spy, Yi Qian's eyebrows twitched. Her fingers trembled as she flipped to the last page. There was a photo on the last page. Yi Qian's pupils contracted when she saw the person in the photo. "This is the person who shot martyr Sun Xueqing behind her back. We arrested him half a month ago." Commander-in-Chief Xia pointed at the photo in Yi Qian's hand and said in a deep voice, "There is a detailed investigation of why he shot her." Chapter 35-43. When Yi Qian saw the person in the photo, she felt as if she had been electrocuted. Li Chuhai said that she knew the person who shot her mother in the back. Yes, she really knew him. Moreover, she had known him for a long time. She had known him for several years. After she looked at everyone around her, she even felt that Li Chuhai was lying to her and deliberately said that she knew the person who shot her mother. However, this was true. From the moment the military avoided her, she knew that Li Chuhai was telling the truth. When she saw the person in the photo, she really knew him. Commander-in-Chief Xia saw that the female soldier sitting across from him had a pale face and bit her lower lip until it turned white. He knew that she could not accept this result. However, this was the truth. He wasn't in cahoots with Li Chuhai. He was also confused and thought that martyr Sun Xueqing was really a spy. At that time, the situation was quite urgent, and because Li Chuhai had intentionally or unintentionally misled him, even letting him hear some so-called secrets, when those missions were stuck to the enemy, we might even be completely wiped out. He was then ordered by Li Chuhai to finally raise his gun and shoot martyr Sun Xueqing. The whole thing wasn't his fault. It was all because of Li Chuhai. He knew that once Xiaoya knew the truth, she would not be able to accept it. After all, this person had helped Xiaoya for a long time. It could be said that he played a part in Xiaoya being able to walk out of the mountains. Until he was arrested, he still thought that martyr Sun Xueqing was a spy. He never thought that his former leader used him. When we told him the truth, he cried until he broke down and said that the person he was most sorry to was you. He was also a victim. From then on, he would be shackled for the rest of his life. He would have to feel guilty for the wrong things he had done. He would have a guilty conscience for the rest of his life. If you want to see him, go and see him. He also wants to see you. Ever since he found out the truth, he has always wanted to see you. Yi Qian, who had bitten her lower lip so hard that her teeth had left an arc, put the photo back into the folder. Her long, thick, curly eyelashes fluttered like butterfly wings, and she slammed the folder shut. When she looked up, Commander-in-Chief Xia saw a deep pain flash across her eyes. Then, in the next moment, her eyes turned dark again. It was very deep and had already hidden all her emotions. Those who were familiar with Xiao Yi knew that she was a child who valued relationships and righteousness. Now that something like this had happened, who would have thought that this would happen, When her future in-laws found out about this, their first reaction was to ask the military to keep it a secret. It wouldn't be too late to tell her after Li Chuhai, the main culprit, was caught. Everyone knew how big of an impact this matter would have on Xiao Yi, so no one dared to let her know immediately. On the night that sixth brother left the country, he didn't forget to call Commander-in-Chief Xia even before he was about to board the plane. He asked Commander-in-Chief Xia to keep it a secret for the time being. It would be even better if he could wait for him to come back. Unfortunately, before sixth brother came back, Li Chuhai exposed the truth that they were hiding with just a few words, which made her feel like a thorn in her heart. Now, she didn't know if this thorn should be pulled out or pierced even deeper. Looking at Yi Qian's ink-rimmed eyes, Commander-in-Chief Xia couldn't understand what she was thinking. The more he couldn't see through her, the more worried Commander-in-Chief Xia became. There was deep concern in his eyes. Yi Qian really wasn't thinking about anything. Shock, sadness, pain, sadness, all these emotions were like a ball of knotted wool at this moment. No matter how she tried to straighten them out, her heart was stuffed full, making it difficult for her to even breathe. Chapter 35-44. The more it was like this, the more Yi Qian didn't want Commander-in-Chief Xia, whose eyes were filled with worry, to see the suffocating sadness in her heart. Even now, she still hadn't accepted such a cruel truth. Even if it was all Li Chuhai's orders, she thought it would be hard for her to accept it in such a short time. Yi Qian took a few deep breaths in succession and said in a low voice, "Where is he now? I want to see him." No matter how calm her expression was, she still let the cat out of the bag when she opened her mouth. Even her voice was trembling. How could she be truly calm? She was just using a calm appearance to hide the turmoil in her heart. Commander-in-Chief Xia looked at the time. It was almost time to get off work, so he picked up the military cap on his desk and put it on. He said to Yi Qian, "Okay, I'll go with you." After he finished speaking, he tidied up his desk and picked up the folder on the desk to put it in the drawer. A photo that was not clipped fell out of the folder. Commander-in-Chief Xia's hand paused and he bent down to pick up the photo that fell to the ground. The man in the photo had thick eyebrows and big eyes. His eyes were bright and spirited. His rough facial features revealed the forthrightness of a northerner. His long years in the military made his facial features even more rigid. One could tell at a glance that he was a soldier from the army. This man was the man who shot Sun Xueqing in the back. When they walked out of the office, the sky was already hazy. The weather in Beijing had been sunny for the past few days, and the air was cool and refreshing. Although it was cold, it was very comfortable. The evening scenery was also quite beautiful. Yi Qian, who walked out of the military headquarters, was not in the mood to appreciate the beautiful scenery. After getting into the car, she kept looking out the window, as if there was an invisible barrier that isolated her. She didn't want to look at the people outside, and the people outside also couldn't feel her presence. Commander-in-Chief Xia didn't spend much time talking to Yi Qian. This kind of thing couldn't be accepted just by talking to her. It was a process of acceptance. Even when they found out who the shooter was, they couldn't accept it, let alone Yi Qian, who had received a lot of help from him. The person who killed their mother was someone they knew and treated as family. No matter who it was, they couldn't accept it all at once. That kind of feeling was even worse and more painful than knowing that a stranger had killed his mother. Yi Qian knew that it was rude of her to sit in the same car as the commander-in-chief without saying a word, but now her mind was in a mess. When she thought about the person she was going to meet later, not only was her heart in a mess, even her mind was in a mess. In such a mess, she just wanted to be alone and did not want to say a word. Commander-in-Chief Xia could understand. Moreover, Yi Qian was his daughter-in-law, so he was even more forgiving and doting on her. Therefore, he didn't disturb Yi Qian if she didn't say anything. When they arrived at their destination, Commander-in-Chief Xia said, Xiao Yi, go alone. Call me when you're done. Yi Qian gratefully bowed deeply to Commander-in-Chief Xia, who was exceptionally tolerant of him. He turned around and walked through the heavy iron gates with the guards. The people locked up in the depths of the iron gates were not ordinary people. Everyone had a single cell, and the walls were covered with soft bags to prevent the people inside from harming themselves or committing suicide. After passing through several doors, Yi Qian walked very slowly. The guard who led her over did not rush her. He also slowed down so that Yi Qian could keep up with him. As they walked deeper and deeper, Yi Qian suddenly felt a little restless. She clearly had a lot of questions in her mind, but she just couldn't sort them out. She wanted to clarify the questions she wanted to ask, but she just didn't know where to start. Chapter 35-45. She wanted to ask him if he had recognized her when she first went to the military. She wanted to ask him why he had helped her so much back then. Was it because he felt guilty? She wanted to ask him if he had avoided her when she went to the military and did not see her for a long time because he knew who she was. There were too many questions she wanted to ask, but these questions were too sharp and too hurtful. She was indebted to him, and he had done his best to help her. He was like family to her. She really could not bear to ask him these sharp questions. Yi Qian suffered and struggled as the guards led her to the isolation room. In this room with surveillance cameras and guards, she waited for the person she wanted to see to come out. She did not know if it was just her imagination, but Yi Qian heard the faint sound of metal chains in the room. She stood up immediately, then slowly sat back down. Her heart was in pain. Perhaps the place where they were being held was a little far away. Yi Qian waited for about 5 minutes before the bulletproof glass wall in the isolation room moved. A prison guard walked out first, then the sound of metal chains being dragged on the floor could be heard clearly. Hearing the sound, Yi Qian unconsciously stood up. She stared unblinkingly at the door until a tall figure walked out. The moment she saw the person, Yi Qian's eyes suddenly felt sore. Warm tears slowly flowed out from her eyes. She looked at the person who had come. Her lips moved very, very slightly. It seemed like she was saying a few words, but it also seemed like she was too emotional to say anything. When the person saw Yi Qian, he first smiled slightly, then sighed softly. "Little Yi, you're here." Just like before, whenever he was in the regiment and saw her, he would say, "Aya, little Yi, you're here." Then he would ask, "How long do you plan to stay this time? Can you stay for a few more days? Quick, help me train those soldiers. Every one of them needs training. I don't even count on the squad leader, platoon leader, or company commander. I'm counting on you." Since the second half of the second year, he would say this every time she went to the military. Lu Tuan, Yi Qian walked up to the glass wall and clung to it with both hands. Tears streamed down his face uncontrollably. She really never thought that Lu Tuan was the one who shot her mother in the back. Really never thought about it. When she saw the photo, she even wanted to say, "Is there a mistake? How could it be Lu Tuan? How could it be Captain Lu?" But how could he be wrong? After a comprehensive investigation by the three parties, the events of that year were investigated bit by bit. How could it be wrong? She had hoped so much that it was wrong. She had never wished so much that something was wrong, that something was not right. She did not dare to show too much emotion in front of Commander-in-Chief Xia. Now that she saw Lu Tuan walk out and saw that his hands and feet were chained, Yi Qian's heart ached as she thought of everything that had happened in the past. In the past, he had helped her too much. He would often say to her, "Little Yi, you're really amazing. If my daughter was half as capable as you, then I would really be relieved." Then he would say, "Haste makes waste. Little Yi, although we ask our soldiers to be strict with themselves, we're not so strict that we have to train them day and night." She even heard the soldiers in the army say, "Little Yi, why haven't you come to the base yet? Don't tell me you've been scolded so badly by me that you don't dare to come?" Chapter 35-46. This was Lu Tuan. He reached out to help her when she was at her most difficult time. When she needed help the most, he was the one who helped her. Uncle Jen had told her in private that if Lu Tuan hadn't agreed to take her to the military, he wouldn't have had the authority to do so. It was Lu Tuan's approval that allowed her to go to the military for training and enter the gun and ammunition storage. Later, when Yi Jifan detained her household register, he asked Commander Yi Jifan to go to the school and take out the documents from the provincial military. This forced Yi Jifan to have no choice but to move her household register out. He was worried that she wouldn't have enough money to go to school, so he reported to the higher-ups to give him a pension that would last her until she graduated from university. Later on, she went to the automobile company to train with the soldiers. Lu Tuan was afraid that she would give up halfway, so on the first day, he told her that if she did well, he would take her to a good place. It was because of Lu Tuan's encouragement that she was able to go overseas with the higher-ups. She still remembered that when she was training with the soldiers, she accidentally got injured. At that time, Lu Tuan ran towards her with a pale face and scolded the soldiers. Lu Tuan was relieved when he saw that she only had a graze on her arm and nothing else. He even said to her in a serious and caring tone, "You're considered a soldier under me. You have to be strict. You can't be lazy just because of a small injury." Lu Tuan, who cared so much about her and took care of her. But he was the one who shot her mother in the back. Yi Qian, who was holding onto the glass wall, looked at the haggard Lu Tuan with tears in his eyes. Lu Tuan was still full of energy when he was transferred, but now even his beard had grown out. His eyes had the gray of an old man. Transferred, suddenly Yi Qian's body trembled. His shrunken pupils gradually dilated. He looked at Lu Tuan in a daze. Transferred. Lu Tuan transferred last year, and Li Chuhai returned last year. Was that why Lu Tuan transferred? Was Lu Tuan forced to transfer because of Li Chuhai's threats? After Principal Chen was discharged from the hospital, he was hired as the chief instructor of the sniper base in the southern province. She didn't have any training arrangements for the winter break, so she went to the sniper base as well. There, she met Lu Tuan and Political Commissar Yen. It was also at that time that she learned that Lu Tuan had been transferred to civilian work and Political Commissar Yen had been transferred. Lu Tuan didn't tell her personally. Principal Chen only told her after they left. He said that he didn't want to distract her, so he didn't tell her directly. When Lu Tuan left, he said to her, "You have to walk your own path in the future. He can only help you up to this point." At that time, she did not feel anything. She thought that Lu Tuan was reluctant to leave the army, reluctant to leave his comrades, and reluctant to leave her, a soldier who could be considered half his subordinate. Now that he thought about it, Lu Tuan must have known something, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only remind himself. Yi Qian's mind was in a mess. His hatred for Li Chuhai increased. Lu Tuan had already sat down. He looked at the young girl who was holding onto the glass wall and crying non-stop. The smile in his eyes was bitter. He sat down and turned on the small speaker used for communication. His voice sounded a little hoarse. "Don't cry, little girl Yi. I'm sorry. I'm the one who got you into this. Don't cry." Yi Qian slowly sat down. When she heard the familiar voice and the familiar intimacy, the tears that had just stopped gushed out again. Why did Lu Tuan's voice sound so hoarse? Chapter 35-47. His voice was hoarse and he looked much older. Even his energy, and spirit seemed to have faded away. "Uncle Lu, are you okay?" Yi Qian asked softly. Her numerous questions turned into a greeting. Even when facing Lu Tuan who shot her mother in the back, Yi Qian still remembered Lu Tuan's kindness to her. When Lu Tuan heard that he had changed from Lu Tuan to Uncle Lu, the unyielding man's eyes were filled with tears. This girl, why didn't she hate him? Why didn't she scold him? Why did she care about him? This girl. Why did she make his heart ache so much? Girl, you must have known by now that you're here. I'm the bastard who didn't know right from wrong and shot Martyr Sun Xueqing in the back. I was the one who killed your mother. Little Yi, I was the one who fired. I was the one who fired. At this point, Lu Tuan's bloodshot eyes were filled with tears. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. If I had been a little smarter and reported the situation to my superiors, what happened back then wouldn't have happened. You wouldn't have lost your parents at such a young age. Yi Qian, it's all my fault, it's all my fault. Please apply to the military to give me a quick death sentence. I've let you down, I've let Martyr Sun Xueqing down, I've let Uncle Jen down. I'm a sinner, I'm a sinner. You, quickly let the military give me a death sentence. When I'm in the underworld, I'll kowtow to Martyr Sun Xueqing and Uncle Jen to admit my guilt. When Lu Tuan was arrested, he didn't know what he had done wrong, so he was very calm. When he arrived in the capital, he was investigated, questioned, and interrogated. When he finally understood what had happened, he didn't cry out loud. Because at that time, he was indeed following orders and didn't intend to murder. Until now, when he heard Yi Qian ask, "Uncle Lu, are you okay?" That voice full of concern made Lu Tuan's spirit collapse. Yi Qian saw Lu Tuan crying until the veins on his neck bulged. She also cried until her shoulders were shaking. From Lu Tuan's endless tears and his sorrowful expression, she read regret, guilt, and self-blame. She wanted to say a few words of comfort, but she couldn't bring herself to say it. Faced with Lu Tuan, who had killed his mother, Yi Qian could only think of the words, "God is making fools of people." Sniffling, Yi Qian inched closer to the glass wall and asked Lu Tuan in a hoarse voice, "Uncle Lu, did you know whose daughter I am?" The iron-skinned man nodded with bloodshot eyes. "Yes, I've known since a long, long time ago. Coincidentally, I was on a business trip to the province, so I brought your photo to the cemetery of martyrs. That day I knew whose daughter you were." Lu Tuan's emotions gradually stabilized when he mentioned the past. He would tell Yi Qingtang everything she wanted to know in detail and would not hide anything from her. 7 years ago, Uncle Jen came to me and said, "Platoon Leader Lu, I have a granddaughter who has no parents. She's a good seedling. She has a good memory, quick reflexes, and can endure hardship. I want to apply to bring her to the army to learn. Not just 1 or 2 days of learning, but she'll be able to follow me in and out of the gun and ammunition depot. What do you think?" At that time, Uncle Jen stayed in the army as a sergeant major. Since Uncle Jen said so, I didn't refuse. At that time, Uncle Jen had already retired. The only reason he was able to stay in the army was because the army needed him. At that time, Lu Tuan didn't dare to offend Uncle Jen. Chapter 35-48. Although Yi Qian knew that she was an exception, she didn't know what Uncle Jen had done for her. She listened quietly as Lu Tuan spoke slowly. "Then, Uncle Jen handed me a small photo of you and told me that this was the girl. Her mother was a martyr and her father died early. She was placed in Uncle Jen's home and wasn't very well liked. She was already 13 or 14 years old, thin and weak. She looked a few years younger than her actual age. At that time, I even joked that she might be a little malnourished and would be fine after a while. Uncle Jen wanted to train you and said that you were pitiful, but you were indeed a good seedling. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought this up. See, did you agree? If you did, I'd let her come over in a few days. Since you've put it this way, how can I refuse?" Uncle Jen had dedicated his life to the army, and the higher-ups specifically told me that as long as Uncle Jen made a request, I had to agree even if it was unreasonable. Lu Tuan's haggard face smiled when he mentioned Uncle Jen. At that time, Uncle Jen made a request. It was an unreasonable request, so I didn't dare to agree immediately. I only said that I needed to ask. I took a look at the photo and didn't recognize you immediately, so I made an application to the provincial government first. Later, Xia Jinyuan, who was assigned to a basic company, mentioned you to me and said that I could try to train you. After discussing it with Old Yen, I called the provincial government to urge them on account of Uncle Jen and Xia Jinyuan. The provincial government was still hesitant at first, but I said that I didn't have any problems, so the approval was granted. After I applied for the entry permit, Uncle Jen showed me the photo you took in the past few days. I was shocked by the girl's cold, dark eyes in the photo, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on my back. Little Yi, your eyes were full of murderous intent in the photo. It was this murderous intent that reminded me of your mother. When I looked at your facial features carefully, the more I looked at you, the more familiar you looked, like a spy that I had killed with my own hand. Lu Tuan smiled bitterly as he said this. At that moment, he was very shocked, but it had been more than 10 years, so he couldn't take it anymore. He was shocked, but he didn't say anything. He wanted to do some research before making a decision. He didn't ask Grandpa Jen immediately. Instead, he went to the Southern Province Cemetery for Martyrs. There, he saw a black and white photo. The female soldier in the photo was wearing an old-fashioned military cap. The corners of her mouth were slightly curved, revealing small dimples on both sides. She had bright eyes and white teeth. She was very beautiful. The girl in the red photo in his hand was very similar to the female soldier in the black and white photo, except for her eyes. At that time, he knew whose granddaughter Uncle Jen was talking about. She was the daughter of the martyr Sun Xueqing, the daughter of a spy that he had secretly dealt with. Yi Qian gently closed her eyes and interrupted Lu Tuan's answer with a slightly tense voice. In other words, you knew whose daughter I was when you applied for the travel permit. But why? Why didn't you tell me? Why hide it? If he had told them earlier, they wouldn't have had to take so many detours and spend so much time to find out who the mastermind was. Hearing this, the bitterness and regret on Lu Tuan's face deepened. I wanted to say that after I confirmed it, I wanted to immediately call back to the army to tell Grandpa Jen, but in the end, I held myself back. Because at that time, your mother wasn't a martyr in my heart. She was a spy, and her children shouldn't be blamed for her crimes. I thought that if you were really a good seedling, I shouldn't be biased because of your mother. Chapter 35-49. When he came back from the Cemetery of Martyrs, he thought about it for almost an entire night before deciding to keep quiet and observe for a while. If it worked, he would stay. If it didn't work, he would talk to Uncle General. With Uncle Jen's personality, he definitely wouldn't let that girl stay. Who would have thought that when he returned, Old Yen, who had returned to the military earlier than him, would happily tell him that Uncle Jen's granddaughter was really amazing. She was a genius, definitely a genius. Old Yen had never praised anyone so happily in front of him, which made him a little curious for a moment. After he saw and understood, he was shocked. He wasn't wrong. That girl was a genius. Lu Tuan, whose emotions were fluctuating, coughed softly. His coughs were very loud, and Yi Qian was so anxious that he hurriedly asked the prison guard, "Can you get me a glass of water?" The prison guard didn't refuse and poured a glass of water for Lu Tuan. When Lu Tuan took the water and saw Yi Qian's worried expression, the torment in his heart made him want to go to the execution ground immediately. After drinking half the glass of water, Lu Tuan lowered his head and buried it in his arms. His slow voice was full of pain. "At that time, I was glad that your mother was buried as a martyr before she died. Otherwise, she would have dragged you down. No matter how talented you were, you wouldn't have been able to enter the military." Yi Qian's chest felt as if there was a heavy stone pressing down on it. It wasn't that Lu Tuan didn't want to say it, but because in his heart her mother wasn't a martyr, but a spy. Li Chuhai. Li Chuhai. Letting you end it so quickly is really letting you off easy. Her chest felt suffocated, but her heart felt like it was on fire, burning so much that her internal organs hurt. Her mother, even in death, she had to bear a groundless accusation. Li Chuhai, you're truly despicable and shameless. At that moment, Lu Tuan's chest was heaving up and down so violently that he couldn't speak. He hated himself for not saying anything, for not asking. As the thin and weak girl grew day by day, he began to vaguely understand some things. He knew that Yi Qian suspected that her mother did not die in the line of duty. After knowing this, he wanted to have a secret chat with Yi Qian, but he was worried that if she found out, she would hate her heroic mother. After much consideration, he decided to keep it a secret. Hate, too much hate. He should have said it. He should have asked. Lu Tuan, who was gripping his hair tightly, heard Yi Qian ask him softly, "Have you ever thought that my mother might not be a spy? Also, is it because Li Chuhai came back that you had no choice but to quit?" Lu Tuan was so angry that he wanted to slap himself. "No, I never doubted it. Your mother and I were not in the same unit. I knew that your mother was a spy. Other than what Li Chuhai said, your mother's leader also told me. I received an order to carry it out secretly. Later, your mother suddenly spoke to a suspect with the surname Sun. I paid attention and carried out the order. After I raised the gun, I was immediately evacuated. Then, I was transferred away. Li Chuhai had nothing to do with the transfer. It was a normal transfer. If I didn't know about this, I would have forgotten about Li Chuhai." In other words, Lu Tuan was transferred immediately after he was given the order to fire the gun. He didn't know what happened afterward. So, until he was arrested, he still thought that her mother was a spy. It wasn't that Lu Tuan was stupid, but that the enemy was too cunning. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.